Call the Tuesday, January 30th RTD meeting to order. We are convened as of 5:31 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to please mute themselves if attending virtually or on your microphone unless you are acknowledged to speak. Thank you for joining us this evening. The board has reconvened as of last year to in-person meetings for our monthly full board meetings. But please note that our committee meetings have continued to be held remotely via Zoom and have been audio and video recorded. The meeting minutes, along with the unofficial meeting minutes, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. You can visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting and our other meetings are also available on RTD's YouTube page. I would now like to ask Secretary Guzman to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. At this time, I'll now ask Treasurer Bouquet if you would please read the land acknowledgement.
The RTD Board of Directors acknowledges that the land on which our buses and trains operates is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to these lands. We honor our indigenous elders who have traveled, inhabited, and stewarded these mountains, hills, and plains throughout generations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of inequity of the Native and all historically oppressed peoples, and recognize their current and future contributions in the district as we move forward.
Thank you, sir. I will now call the roll. Treasurer Bouquet.
Present.
Director Broom.
Present.
Director Busick.
Here.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Here.
Director Deschel.
Here.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Here.
Secretary Guzman.
I am present.
Director Harwick.
Here.
Director Rosenthal.
Present.
Director Ruscia.
Here.
Director Sloan.
Here.
Director Tisdale.
Present.
Director Whitmore.
Present.
And this is Eric Davidson. I am present. With all members present and 0 absent, we have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to ask Director Tisdale if you would please read out our statement of employee appreciation.
The Regional Transportation District Board of Directors recognizes that RTD's dedicated workforce is the lifeblood of the agency. Every day, RTD employees do extraordinary things to make lives better through connections. We honor their work of delivering transit excellence, service, and value to the community, especially demonstrated during difficult and stressful moments. May the actions taken by the Board of Directors demonstrate our profound gratitude, commitment, and support for all RTD employees.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Retiree Awards. One of the many rewarding duties of serving on this Board of Directors is acknowledging and recognizing our RTD retirees. And the time has come for us to do so this evening and congratulate all those who have decided to move on from RTD at this time. At this time, all at once, I'd like to read the names of our employees who have retired since December. Don Allensworth, parts clerk for 16 years. Bernard Celestin, a bus operator for 15 years. Diane Cartwright, a talent acquisition partner for 16 years. Uriel Hernandez, bus operator for 16 years. And finally, Robert Stamfel, a mechanic for 20 years. Do we have any of our retirees present? Unfortunately, with our retirees not here, I would just like to simply thank them again for their hard work and their commitment and long years of dedication to this agency and to the public. A brief round of applause, please. Thank you. At this time, we're going to move to a bittersweet portion of our agenda. We're presented with an opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments of one of our former RTD directors who has long served this agency and the public well. I'm speaking of former director Kate Williams, who has resigned her seat on this board earlier this month. I want to take some time for us to share our collective appreciation for all that Director Williams has done for RTD and for our region during her tenure as an RTD director from District A. This evening, we'll be recognizing a passionate, a dedicated, and honorable public servant who has left an indelible mark on this board and this agency. I'll be reading the proclamation for former Director Williams that we have drafted, and then I'll ask for any directors who would like to say a few words after getting a motion and a second. At that time, we'll open up for some further discussion. At this time, I'll read the proclamation in recognition of the contributions made to the Regional Transportation District from 2017 to 2024 by Director Kate Williams. Whereas the constituents of District A elected Director Kate Williams to represent them on the RTD Board of Directors in 2016 and again in 2020. And whereas Director Williams served faithfully and dutifully on the board for over 7 years, pushing and inspiring RTD to be the trusted leader in mobility, delivering excellence and value to RTD's customers and community while making lives better through connections. And whereas Director Williams served with distinction on many committees during her tenure and always brought a voice to champion the needs of transit riders, especially the elderly and disabled. In her terms as Chair and Vice Chair of the Operations and Customer Service Committee, Chair of the Operations and Safety Committee, Vice Chair of the Planning Capital Programs and Fast Tracks Committee, as well as serving on the General Manager Oversight and Performance Management Committee, the Zero Emission Vehicle or ZEV Ad Hoc Committee, the Dr. Cog Regional Transportation Committee, the Northwest Parkway Public Highway Authority Board, and the RTD CDOT Liaison. And whereas Director Williams championed RTD's Zero Fare for Youth pilot program to create a new generation of transit riders and help close equity gaps in the district, and worked with her board colleagues and RTD General Manager and Chief Executive Officer Deborah Johnson to ensure its successful implementation. And whereas Director Williams served on the board during a time of tremendous progress for RTD, during which she helped guide the organization to ensure its long-term viability and sustainability. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the RTD Board of Directors that we, the Board of Directors, hereby extend our deepest gratitude and commendations to Director Kate Williams for her many contributions to this board and the residents of the district over her years of service, and recognize her steadfast dedication to RTD and its customers, dated this 30th day of January 2024. Is there a motion to approve this proclamation?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Let the record reflect that everybody has moved and seconded this. I'll leave it to the board office to help determine the nature of the record. Colleagues, at this time, I'd like to open the matter up for further discussion and comment from board directors at this time on the board to acknowledge and discuss Director Williams' commitment and dedication and contributions specifically to this board and this agency of RTD. I'd like to just kick this off by personally thanking Director Williams for not only being dedicated to this agency and to transit, but doing so while also not on the board and continuing to be a voice before and after her position on the RTD board. Thank you for always being and remaining a courageous full-time transit champion. With that, I'll open up for my colleagues to share any remarks they have regarding Director Williams' service here. Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, fellow members, for doing this proclamation. And so RTD is not just losing a director. And for me, I'm also losing a colleague here on the board. I'm losing a friend, and I'm losing a confidant, somebody I would call always after a meeting and say, oh, wow, what about this and that and the other thing? And somebody who would talk me down and somebody who would give me feedback and perspective from her many years of service. And so, thank you for being that colleague, for being that friend, for being that confidant, and for being a director for RTD. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Director Sloan, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to say the proclamation doesn't say it all, but all it says is absolutely correct. Kate, your voice and your vote has been of great value to the board, to the agency, and the metro area as a whole. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Director Sloan. Director Whitmore, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's been my honor to serve with Kate on a couple of different functions with operations and safety, and I'm pleased to be the chair. I will not be able to fill your shoes by any means. One of the things that I'm probably most sad about your departure is we're losing the director of fun. So many times you said things we were all thinking and you got by with it because you're smooth. I'm going to miss you so much. 2 words to describe you as I did 2 weeks ago in the Ops Committee: passion and compassion. Godspeed.
Thank you, Director Whitmore. Director DeShell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Williams, I think thank you doesn't quite cut it. I think, one of my first interactions with you was, we were a group of us looking to run, and you said, look, this is a lot of work. And if you're not ready to do a lot of work, you shouldn't run. And at the time, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I think, it emphasizes, I think, your dedication and the level to which you hold yourselves and your colleagues. And whether it was while I was running or different issues on the board, or as my family and I progressed the last year, you've always made sure to check in with people both personally and professionally. And I have a tremendous amount of gratitude and admiration and respect in a way that we all should try to live, of recognizing people for who they are and with their flaws and with their greatness, and being able to still work hand in hand with people. And it's evident the impact you've had on all of us. And I think on the greater transit community, for folks who go out in the community, there's very few people you run into who, you say you're with RTD, that, oh, Kate? Of course. So thank you, and we'll miss you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Director DeShell. Director Harwick, please.
Thank you. So I haven't known Kate for particularly long, about a year now, but she is one of the most joyful people, so funny, and she just has this spark of, I don't know, a lot of things. It's all sort of just built into one, but she just, once you meet her, you're forever changed by her presence. And everyone has spoken about her board. I just more want to talk about her as a human and just how amazing she is and how lucky we all are to have known her and know her right now. And I'm proud to call you my friend. And I think we all are proud to call you our friends as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Harwick. Treasurer Bouquet, please.
Thank you very much. So there's one thing that I know with Kate, and what's so incredible about that is there's 3 things that I think of with Kate when it comes down to a transit rider, which is amazing, being on our board and being a transit rider and a supporter, caring about our future when it comes down to our youth, I'm a full-time teacher, and I know I share in the same values that you come down to when it comes down to future writers. And the third is environment and the future of our planet. And it's incredible how you've been able to mix all three of those. And my work with you for the last almost 4 years has really inspired not only myself, not only our fellow board members, but everyone around you in your community. And what is incredible is you're creating that legacy, lasting. With our free pilot program for our youth, we have no idea how many transit riders are going to ride for the first time because of that. And we know this, and we know when people actually get on transit and they leave their cars, as Kate was so passionate about, that it's better for our future and it's better for our environment. So all I can say is thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Bouquet. First Vice Chair Catlin, please.
Thank you. A lot has been said, and I concur with all of it. I would like to say that I met Kate for the first time 6 years ago this next month. Excuse me. And it was really eye-opening for me because I was a candidate for an appointment to fill a vacancy, and I attended the board retreat. And one of the first people I met was Kate. And we had a great discussion then, and we've had many, many great discussions afterwards. And so it's been a privilege to serve with you, but also to have regular conversations, sometimes late at night, and solving all the world's problems. You've been a wonderful friend and a wonderful colleague, and I know you're going to be a transit advocate for the foreseeable future and beyond, and we just really appreciate everything you do.
Thank you. First Vice Chair Catlin. Second Vice Chair Geisinger, please.
Thank you. Hearing all of this, I'm reminded of, I had a warm and generous aunt. And at one point when we were young adults, my sisters and cousins and I were all talking and discovered we each thought we were Aunt Sarah's favorite. And you've touched so many of us, all of us individually, and that's a real talent. And last year when I was chair, there were so many times when I would say, I need to call Kate, see what she thinks. And Kate would say, here's how you want to think about it, Lynn, and was always really helpful. My favorite part of the proclamation was saying that she was pushing and inspired RTD to be better all the time. And that is so true. I see Deborah Johnson nodding, and I see former board members and former staff here who have all turned out, because I think they all feel the same way. Thank you, Kate. You've been a great friend.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair Geisinger. I'm going to jump to Zoom because it can be a lonely world. The hand goes in a different screen. So I see Director Busick. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Kate Williams, for your dedication, compassion, your passion, your wit. You brought so much to this board. And you'll know what I mean when I say every time I put on a pair of socks, I think of you. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Director Busick. I think that was one of the first stories I heard when I joined the board. Director Broom, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I was signing up last, but I think a standing ovation would be in order right now.
Thank you, Director Broom. I appreciate that. That speaks volumes. I'd like to continue the comments, so I'll call on Secretary Guzman, please.
Catarina, gracias. Muchísimas gracias de lo más profundo de mi corazón. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You were my first board buddy. We had coffee at Union Station, talked about our district. You filled me in on what I was getting into, as you have done with others, and held me in serious regard as a board member, and helped me find my way and maneuver through committees and discussions and debates with a kind hand and a gentle countenance, but always with a mother's stern talking to if I stepped out of line. And I appreciate it so much because that's what real aunties, real titis do for their nephews. And your wisdom will not be forgotten. And I carry the sense of joy that you bring to this board forward with all of us, and a strong sense of service and admiration of the work that you've done. And I just want to tell you that. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary Guzman. Director Tisdale, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Williams, there were words that were used to describe my mother, and then years later, those same words were used to describe my late wife. And I thought those words are particularly appropriate for you. Often right, sometimes wrong, but never in doubt. And that passion, that fire, that commitment, that incredible dedication to the pursuit of what you saw as the right result is something that will assuredly live on with all of us. I wanted to take this seat when we did our annual musical chairs that we do when we have a new chair elected and a new executive committee, because I wanted to sit here. The fire that lived here, I swear to you, will continue to burn on. It will serve as a flame in honor of you, and it will be here long after all of us are gone, because what you have done, what you have meant to us, will be here with RTD, but more importantly, it will be here with all of the people you have touched long after all of us are gone. God bless you, and thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Ruscia, please.
For the first time, I don't have any words. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Ruscia. I'd now like to call upon our General Manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Director Williams, you and I have had a great relationship. We both are passionate about what we do because we just do it. We also stay true to our convictions and stand in our truth and are imperfectly perfect. And recognizing that we've always advocated for those that often don't have a voice. Being the voice of the voiceless is extremely important. And I want to thank you personally and professionally for partnering with me when I came into this role, for ensuring that we could invest in future generations of transit customers and to create a sense of freedom for those that are chronologically advanced, because oftentimes those two demographics that are different but very similar in a sense are often not factored into the equation. So on behalf of the nearly 3,000 employees that comprise the Regional Transportation District, thank you for being you. And most definitely, as Director Tisdale said so eloquently, the fire will remain. So thank you for your service, ma'am.
I'd like to thank my board colleagues and our general manager and CEO for providing comments. I think as we all sit here and as we do what we do, serving the public, we often ask ourselves, am I helping? Am I making a difference? Are we helping? Are we making a difference? And I think what we hear tonight is that Director Williams, you've helped, you've made a difference and continue to do so. At this time, I'd now like to open up the floor for anyone in attendance who would like to say a few words regarding Director Williams' contributions to RTD and to the community. If so, you are welcome to please come forward to the podium, state your name, and be recognized. There is a button that says push on your microphone. You can go ahead and push that.
How about that? Oh, super. My name is George Michael Williams. I have known Director Williams for 64 years, since the day I was born. She has been an amazing sister, but when she came to me and asked that myself and my children would help her collect signatures so that she could run for an office at RTD, I said, "Are you kidding me?" Little did I know the impact that that would have not only on my children, but on all of you, and given the words that you have said this evening. Every one of those words in my heart is true. I have seen it my whole life, and I just would like to express my appreciation for the fact that you have come together to honor Catherine in this manner. She's been a wonderful sister. Thank you for thinking she's a wonderful board member, and we'll just keep her as long as we can. So thank you very kindly. It's been a pleasure to meet all of you, as well as to know my sister. Thanks.
Thank you very kindly. And if the next speaker can thank you, Director Rosenthal.
There we go. Hello. Director Williams, I'm supposed to address the body, aren't I? Apologies. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Hines. I serve on Denver City Council, and I have the wonderful pleasure of representing this area, but also the wonderful honor of being able to create a proclamation for Director Williams. So I'm very happy to have the honor and opportunity to recognize you again. So as apologies, as I talked with the director in the past, she said, we'll see each other down the road. I see you again, and I hope I can continue to see you, but I just want to thank you for all you've done for me personally, all you've done for the disability community, being the executive director of Denver Regional Mobility Access Council, representing people with disabilities here on the RTD board, and being an awesome leader, servant in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, not seeing, oh, yes, okay, here we go. Please
Well,
go
good
ahead.
evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I rise to celebrate the career of one Catherine Williams. We're so appreciative on behalf. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Doug Rex, Executive Director of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, 2900 Inca Street in the great city of Denver. But no, I just wanted to take a minute just to share. Listen, the first time I met Kate, she was working at Dr. Mack at the time, and I'm sure this is not going to surprise you, but she was strongly advocating for mobility services for older adults, and she wasn't shy. And I'm like, God dang, I really like this woman. I'm really going to enjoy this relationship. But through the years, I don't know how many times I just said, oh my God, Kate, you can't say that. But she did, and but she's so passionate about what she does, and we're so appreciative. What I like about Kate most, obviously, she always got that grin on her face, but she understands relationships. She understands the importance of relationships. And there are plenty of times, I'm serious, about half the folks that I know in this industry is due to Kate and those relationships. every now and then she'll send me a text or something, you have to meet such and such. And I'm like, all right, I'll check my, no, you have to meet this person. And I'm just so appreciative she understands that, whether it's, it's that garage party that she has, or maybe you're lucky enough to have an actual dinner party inside of her house. It was always so much fun, and we're so appreciative. My wife, who's a bit of an introvert in herself, I think Kate has really helped her break out of her shell. So we're so appreciative of knowing you and continuing that relationship, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you all so very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Hello, everyone. Barbara McManus, past board executive manager. Jack is now my replacement. I had the pleasure of working with Kate for many years. I can say that she's an inspiration. She's a force to be reckoned with. She's a true friend. She's a collaborator. She's a builder of bridges, and she should be proud of everything she's done every day in her life. Thank you.
Finally, another speaker. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Tina Francone, former RTD director. And what a privilege to be here tonight to honor Kate and her accomplishments. Her unwavering commitment to this community and to transportation in general is unmatched. On a personal note, Kate's been a personal friend. She's come behind me, she's come alongside me, she's held my hand and been in front of me. And so I can't say enough good things about Kate, and she will be, her efforts here in this industry will be missed, but I'm guessing she still has a pot to stir too. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Director Williams, for everything you've done.
And our next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, General Manager Johnson. My name is Chuck Sisk, and I had the privilege of serving with Kate for a couple of years. And it was such a privilege, because when you see people that are as genuine as Kate and as loving and lovable as Kate, it really does bring back the issue of public service. She did it because of the people, not because Kate was trying to be a resume builder. And there's so many lessons that we've heard about Kate tonight, but one of the things I take away is her genuineness. She loves people, she's an advocate, but she is so measured, and she is so willing to make people feel better. And that's something that I think all of us can gain from Kate throughout this. And if I could leave with anything, it's the fact that this is a lovely, lovely person. And she was lovely on the stage, and she's even more lovely when she's at the street fair dancing. So, Kate, we love you, and it's so great to be here to celebrate Kate Williams and her service to RTD, but really Kate Williams as a person. Thank you so much.
And our next speaker, please.
Hi, everyone. Joshua Sperling. I'm at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I've had all sorts of wonderful interactions with Kate for many years, probably 7 or so. It was observing her in Dr. Mack meetings with rooms of 40 people late at night. It was meeting at Dr. Cog and talking about veterans and older adults in the outskirts of our metro region and in the mountain communities. It was talking with entrepreneurs coming from outside of our country and being invited to our region to come up with new solutions for on-demand transit. Her taking me up to Loveland, Colorado to have a lovely lunch with 2 of her colleagues from Carepool, Rideco, and we were visiting Lightning e-motors, looking at conversions of different types of vehicles to look at affordable ways to create electrification. And she most recently, right around Thanksgiving, wrote us a letter of support for our U.S. Department of Transportation Climate Change and Transportation Research Center centered on equity, vulnerability, climate risk, and environmental impact. And we just found out last Friday that we were selected as a finalist. I reread Kate's letter this evening before coming here, and I thought it was just a wonderful letter about RTD and the role that they could play in supporting this proposal. So I don't know how many are left, but we are, one finalist will be interviewed end of this month, and I'm sure there's a lot I'd love to be able to carry forward from Kate. I proposed to the team in her honor to look at and study the impacts of this fare free for youth option, which directly benefited my family. We had twins in March, and I've been riding transit every day with my 5-year-old and 2 10-month-olds to get to school, to take them downtown. And I think I recall several years back being at a Railvolution conference here in Denver and just asking the audience, all of you that are passionate about transportation and transit, please raise your hand if you remember an experience being a young person and your parents or your grandparents or someone on your life taking you on public transit and that being a part of your childhood. And I would say people at this conference, almost 95% raised their hands. And I think it just speaks to we're influenced from a very early age in terms of positive life experiences when we take on a certain mode choice, and it's associated with being with our parents. For me, I'll share this is emotional in some ways because I lost my father 2 years ago to an aggressive cancer. And he had a career of public service working at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and affordable housing and linking it with health and with transit. And it was a surprise then, and hearing this news about Kate was a surprise now. And I think for me, I'm still reflecting 2 years later as of Martin Luther King Day about the passing of my father and all the wonderful memories. And I think I'm feeling like Kate will be another person in my mind a lot over the next few years. And I'm hoping we'll be able to continue having these conversations about playing forward the good stuff and how it impacts each of our work. So thank you, Kate. One last thought, and this wasn't prepared at all, but I just joined the Frank Bruno's Via Colorado board, and I delayed it a year or two saying, I'm busy, just lost my father, I just had twins, but I think the timing is right. I talked to him in December, and I'm joining with Bill Van Meter as the 2 new board members, and I think Kate's passion for supporting those with disabilities, older adults, using technology, coming up with new business models, and bringing the community together in many ways, including someone who's at the National Renewable Energy Lab thinking about transit, energy efficient transportation systems. I really appreciate all that I've learned, so thank you.
So finally, I will call on, and Kate, you taught me when I got on this board that once you're on this board, everybody has the same first name, and you have that first name. So with that, Director, I'd like to open the floor to you if you would like to say any words to the board or to the group.
Thank you, Director. That was great. True brother.
My brother. I want you guys to know that everything that I've heard tonight is amazing, and I'm grateful to all of you for all that you have all done in this place and in this community. And you're going to laugh when you hear what I had already written down. It says, if you have the social and economic privilege to have come here tonight in a car, then your responsibility is to support those who are unable to exercise that privilege. The differently abled, those who are underage, those who have immigrated here, older adults, and our neighbors who are economically challenged. RTD supports all of them. It gets them to school, it gets them to work, it gets them to the grocery, it gets them to the doctor. You need to support RTD. It's a huge part of the fabric of our community. Thank you all for electing me and for helping me to make a difference. Good night.
So, at this time, we do have a motion at hand for this proclamation. So at this time, I'll now call for the vote, which I will do with a roll call vote. Treasurer Bouquet,
Yes.
Director Broom,
Yes.
Director Busick,
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin,
Yes.
Director DeShell,
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger,
Yes.
Secretary Guzman,
Yes.
Director Harwick,
I am here and a yes.
Director Rosenthal,
Yes.
Director Rusha,
Yes.
Director Sloan,
Yes.
Director Tisdale,
Hell yes.
Director Whitmore.
I was going to say that, Doug. He does this to me all the time. Hell yes.
And this is Director Davidson. I am a yes. So with 15 yes votes and 0 no votes, the motion carries for the proclamation. 14, thank you. I'm so used to, 15.
You can vote.
This is what I'm saying. Thank you for continuing to help in matters of RTD, Director. Thank you. With 14 yes votes and 0 no, the motion carries. At this time, we're going to take a brief break for some photographs. People can also use the restroom at this time. I will call us back to order at 6:19. So please be in your seats by 6:19, at which point I'll call us back to order. Thank you. We're going to get started in a moment here. Thank you very much, everybody. I will own the naivety of calling for 6:19, so thank you for the patience. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next section of our agenda. We are reconvened as of 6:25 p.m. We're moving into our public participation portion of the agenda. This is for anyone who would like to address the Board of Directors. As we do have in-person and remote attendees, in-person comments do go first, followed by any that are participating remotely. For those attending in person, please come up to the podium when your name is called. If you have not already signed up to speak and would like to do so, please approach the podium when I call for any additional speakers. For those attending virtually, if you wish to speak and have not done so, please raise your virtual hand, or if dialing in by phone, press *9. Staff will unmute you if you're joining by phone when it is your turn to speak, and if you are dialed in, you may press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that by participating in this public participation process, you are being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments can be submitted to the board in writing. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials for the board, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, please email those materials to the board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. During this time, I'll just remind everyone that the board does not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, again, you may email the board office at the same email address I had just listed. Speakers should begin their remarks by stating their names, and please acknowledge that we'll have up to 3 minutes to provide their comments. I'll go ahead and call up our in-person folks who have signed up, starting with Jamie Lewis, please, from the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. Thank you, Mr. Kroll.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jamie Lewis, and I'm the transit advisor for the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. I live at 1135 Broadway, Denver. Tonight, you will begin discussions about naming or a supplemental naming of the Civic Center station. This is not a decision to be taken lightly. Renaming a building has to be done for extraordinary circumstances. Wade Blank was extraordinary. Not only did he help establish a legacy for RTD, but the entire nation. RTD personnel and riders can take special pride in the fact that in 1983, the Board of Directors directed staff to make its fleet accessible to everyone. In essence, Wade Blank is our Rosa Parks in the disability community. CCDC is here to assist you, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Now, next call on James Flottam from Greater Denver Transit.
Thank you, Chair Davidson. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Flottam. I'm with Greater Denver Transit. My first comment this evening is going to be an acknowledgement of RTD staff and management for a very smooth transition to the new fare structure on January 1st. This was something that our group was extremely excited about happening, about simplifying RTD's fare structure, making, especially for those who have monthly passes, being able to go back and forth to the airport, especially for airport workers, for less than $100 a month, is something that we were terrifically thrilled by. So congratulations to RTD management for accomplishing that very smoothly. The other item that I wanted to raise tonight is in regards to the board packet that went out that includes information on the RTD headcount data. I had a comment at the end of last year that was encouraging management, encouraging the board to call for greater transparency and clarity on headcount trends at RTD. This continues to be the largest challenge the RTD has to restoring service to pre-COVID capacity. And the report that came out today had data that was at best confusing and at worst a little bit misleading. The headcount number for bus operators appeared to increase by over 34 people, which we would applaud as a great achievement, as a great step in the right direction. However, the higher number inferred that there was only a net increase of 4 people. So, and again, and I come to the board with sympathy, is that, there's a lot of information that the board is responsible for combing through to be able to provide, transparent accountability for RTD. And I think just examples like this is a challenge that we have a long way to go. And I hope that in 2024, right, we can continue to make progress, have the agency make progress. But one of the key things that we need to do is we need to simplify and improve the information that you guys are given in order to provide proper governance. So I hope that in 2024, especially over the next couple of months, I'd continue to encourage you to call upon management to simplify and improve metrics that are most essential for RTD to recover to pre-COVID levels of service. That concludes my comments for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Flottam. I'd now like to call on Chris Nicholson, please.
Board members. So I want to talk a little bit today about access, and I'd be remiss if I didn't start by recognizing and thanking Director Williams for her incredible work over the last 7 years. I'm a resident of District A, and she's been the only director that I've ever had living in Denver. And specifically for the work that she did on access for people with disabilities, for paratransit, for access for youth. And I want to speak today about an access issue that I've seen over the last few months that I've seen get honestly worse, that she even called out during her remarks, and that is access for those who are immigrants. I am a full-time transit rider. I go through Union Station on a regular basis. I live downtown, so I see people needing to get around on the 15, on the 43, on the 38 to get up to the shelters at Zuni. And the number of times that I have been asked by someone who does not speak English, how do I get to the shelter? What bus should I take? Who've been looking around in Union Station for information, for a guide, for what to do, for how to get a bus pass, if there are any available for free, and who maybe don't know even how to communicate with the bus drivers to ask them those questions the way that most of us would. I've also spoken with members of City Council about this, with Sarah Parody, and there's interest, there's willingness on the part of the city to work with RTD to do more to solve this problem. I know there's already a lot of work being done to improve wayfinding and to make it easier for people to get around the city. I think it's, rather than just focusing on the moments when we get a large new group of migrants and making sure that they can get to where they need to go, which I think is already being handled reasonably well, the off hours, the folks who are standing outside Union Station, who are hungry and who literally are just asking for food because they have nothing to eat, but don't know how to get to the shelters and the soup kitchens and the restaurant I know that is in downtown that can basically give you food if you work for a little while. These are resources that people who live here, people who've been here for a long time, know about, know how to get to. I think we should see what we can do in terms of leaflets in Union Station in Spanish and other resources so that folks who are here when nobody else is can have an easier time finding their way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. I'd now like to call on Keith Brooks, please.
Hello, I'm Keith, also from Greater Denver Transit. Not to put a downer on what has been a very heartwarming meeting up to this point, but I would like to address the recent derailment on the H line. I need not belabor how unacceptable this is. Suffice it to say, for those of us who regularly use the southeast alignment, the train is no longer a means of transportation. It is a gamble. It is a roll of the dice of whether you will be able to get to work or to school, or just simply not, or just not attend class that day, just skip that meeting, because you don't know when the next train's going to come, and it might be another hour on what should be a 15-minute schedule. But I feel two questions must be asked, generally, rhetorically. One, what does it say about the state of capital programs in RTD that while the line was disrupted for, God, it felt like several years or a decade, to repair and maintain retaining walls along the line, the tracks that they are meant to protect are older than I am. You can read on the rails when they were manufactured. They're from 2002. Now, I won't speculate as to the cause of what caused the derailment. I love a good NTSB report when it's done. I can wait. But it does make me worry about the state of basic infrastructure. And though we had a real wake-up call with the rails in the downtown loop being corroded all the way through, I worry about the basic catenaries and basic tracks and bread and butter that makes a train run. My second point or question is, if derailments are just going to be a fact of life, which given the last few months it seems they will be, what can be done to get cleanup and recovery quicker? It should not take 4 days to re-rail a train that's still standing upright. And freight railroads do that all the time to just get it out of the way. I know because there's an ongoing investigation, you want to leave it in place so pictures can be taken, stuff can be recorded, but please, I hated seeing that train sitting there for 4 days. And if it's going to be an ongoing recurrence to have completely avoidable derailments, please get the train out of the way and get them moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. At this time, I'll now call if there's any other in-person speakers that did not sign up. Seeing none, we will move to our online speakers. I am told there are 4, and I'd like to ask Board Executive Office Manager, Mr. Kroll, if you could please assist in calling those names out. Go ahead, please.
Yes, the first individual who raised their hand is Joe Beaver.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm here. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak in support of renaming the Civic Center Station to the Wade Blank Memorial Station at Civic Center. My name is Joe Beaver, and I'm an ex officio member of RTD's Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities. When those of us with disabilities work together with RTD, we can create some remarkable achievements. We've come a long way since July the 5th, 1978, when the Gang of 19, a group of disability activists led by Wade Blank, blocked the buses in front of the Capitol. Wade Blank not only fought for accessible transportation, he was the man who broke down the institutionalization of throwaway kids whose parents didn't want them because of their disability. The Heritage House nursing home housed several of those youngsters, young adults at that time, and saw an opportunity for recruiting more of this population by hiring Wade Blank as the activities director. He was chosen from a list of ministers. He was young, hip, had long hair, and would fit right in with the Heritage House marketing plan to recruit more young people to join the Heritage House Youth Wing. Wade Blank did recruit several young residents, turned off the Hallmark movies, put on some rock and roll, and ordered pizza. The nursing home rocked like a college dorm, but the nursing home managers didn't like it whenever he took a group of residents to a Grateful Dead concert, and especially didn't like it whenever he took them to the Capitol to describe the deplorable conditions in nursing homes. Wade Blank got fired for that, but he didn't leave his young folks behind. He found apartments that he modified to accommodate wheelchair users, and with the help from Barry Rosenberg, started Denver's first home healthcare agency, a model being followed today. RTD should be very proud of its partnership with Wade Blank. His tireless advocacy for accessible transportation led to significant improvements in RTD's services. His vision and dedication have shaped the RTD that we know today. In recognition of his immense contributions, I propose renaming the Civic Center station to the Wade Blank Memorial Station at Civic Center. I want to do this on July 5th, 2024, 46 years after the sit-in by ADAPT. This should be a national event showcasing our public transportation system from DIA to Union Station to the Capitol and to the suburbs. We have a great city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kroll, if you'd please call and unmute the next speaker, please.
Yes, next we have Aaron Shalef.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I just want to say that, I question the revenue that's being brought in by advertising on the wraps from buses and trains. I understand that revenue is key for RTD's, viability, but I also want to stress that riding transit, when you're being part of an advertising platform, does not contribute to an environment where you want to utilize transit if you have the choice. I would like RTD not to be merely a last resort for people who could not drive. I would like for it to be a pleasurable experience. And someone, I grew up experiencing motion sickness quite often when driving, and having limited visibility is something that would contribute to that. So I just want to raise that issue to the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kroll, if you could please call the name of next speaker and unmute them, please.
Next we have Paolo Solorzano.
Hi, this is Paulo Solorzano with the RTD Riders Alliance, and I'm here to support CCDC, the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, on RTD's considering renaming the Civic Center station for Wade Blank. There are many good reasons for this, and I'm just going to quote the American Hospital Association's their material, and what they've been saying is that transportation barriers can affect a person's access to healthcare services. These barriers may result in missed or delayed healthcare appointments, increased health expenditures, and overall poorer health outcomes. Transportation is interrelated with other social detriments of health, such as poverty, social isolation, access to education, and also racial discrimination. The data from the AHA here is that each year, this is from 2017, but I'm sure it's about the same. Each year, 3.6 million people in the United States do not obtain medical care due to transportation issues. Transportation issues include lack of vehicle access, inadequate infrastructure, long distances, and lengthy times to reach needed services. Transportation costs and adverse policies that affect travel, they affect all of us. And so I think just want to say that, yeah, the Gang of 19, we have a good opportunity to really, RTD, if they can get the get the name right, and like Wade said, let's roll, let's do this, let's make RTD symbolic of, we can lead the way to get us all where we need to get to, healthy. And I just want to echo, yeah, that like, yeah, the immigrant situation, I myself, I can't talk much about it, but like, I am working at the migrant, as an emergency, service, worker, at the migrant shelters. And yeah, they don't know where to go. And, even our own citizens are having a hard time, getting around right now and, there's been 4 derailments, the coping panels, yeah, let's actually try to, let's lead the way, you know, that's what I'm trying to say is, and, hopefully we can do that. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Mr. Kroll, may you please call on the next speaker?
Yes, right now we have 2 speakers left. Next is Christina Johnson.
Do you see that Ms. Johnson is muted? Ms. Johnson, if you're able to unmute on your side, you can go ahead, please. Ms. Johnson, you are still muted. We will come back to Christina Johnson in a moment. Mr. Kroll, can you please call on our next speaker and unmute them, please?
Yes, next we have Barry Rosenberg.
Am I unmuted yet?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Barry Rosenberg. I worked with Wade Blank back in 1973. We worked at a nursing home where there are young people with disabilities, as young as 10 years old, many who use wheelchairs for mobility. I also at that time had a Volkswagen bus. Would take out the middle seats of the bus to accommodate people with disability in wheelchairs. They were much smaller and not as custom made as they are now. And I could get 4 people in wheelchairs, didn't need tie downs because there was no place to fall. It was crammed in, and someone would ride in a seat and transferred. Wade and I, mobility was and I was very touched by what Catherine Williams said about not everyone is able to have their own vehicle or have the resources to, get Uber or any of those kind of things. So public transportation is really important. I was very proud of the fact that I think it was in 1973 or 4, Wade and I organized a demonstration directed toward RTD because there were no plans to make buses accessible. The meeting was I believe was in Colorado Boulevard when RTD was, before it was operational, I believe. And the board was an appointed board, not a elected board. And we got there about an hour and a half before the meeting started. There were chairs, fold-out chairs. We moved them all, and roughly 60 people in wheelchairs sat right in front of the board of directors. We had some amazing speakers to talk about the need for transportation. And it made the front page of either the Rocky Mountain News or the Denver Post. And as a result, we had a paratransit, not like the present system, Handy Ride. It was along the major corridors like Colorado Boulevard, Colfax, Broadway. I remember this friend of mine who had never really, his sister lived in town, never was able to visit her. And it took him to see her 3 hours getting there and 3 hours back. He was crying, he was so excited, but that was hardly a viable system for most people unless they lived along those corridors. There are some amazing people in the Denver disability community. Wade stands out for many things, but particularly transportation. And let me also say that I was a co-founder of Atlantis with Wade And we were the first program in the United States to get people in nursing homes, young people in nursing homes out into the community. We were able to get subsidized housing, and I think we started that trend, and it was not easy. And I need to say, before the system became operational, I used to meet with the RTD staff and talk about the need for transportation, the importance of it. And the irony is, people who need it the most were getting it the least. So although, you know, I lobbied, I wasn't very effective. And hence that's what's led to some of the demonstrations and eventually the situation on Broadway and Colfax, where the Gang of 19 people who were using wheelchairs for mobility blocked 2 RTD buses for 2 days. It was quite an event.
Mr. Rosenberg, thank you for your comments. Could you please wrap in the next 10 seconds, please?
10 seconds. Of all the people involved in getting transportation in Denver, Colorado, and throughout the nation, Wade was the most tenacious, and Wade deserves to have a memorial, be part of the Wade Blank Memorial Center. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Mr. Kroll, is Ms. Christina Johnson still present, and is she available to speak?
We still have Christina Johnson here. We've put her live, and then we did have one additional hand raised from Kelly Tobin, but we'll go next to Christina Johnson to see if she can chime in.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Christina Johnson, and I'm one of the founders, as well as a proud member of Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. We started CCDC back in 1990, when the concept of cross disability was really new. People with disabilities have been divided into different areas by their disability in general, and instead of seeing the unity of the movement, people felt isolated and felt that they weren't able to have any effect on changing the world. I also want to stress the influence that Wade Blank had. And I think using his name at the civic station would send a strong message to people with disabilities, as well as other people using RTD. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Kroll, please call on the next speaker.
Kelly Tobin.
Hi there. So my name is Kelly Tobin, as you know, and I am also a member of the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. In addition, I'm an appreciative RTD passenger, having moved to Denver from Colorado Springs about 15 years back for the Regional Transit Districts system. On July 18th, 2022, I saw a sign on an RTD bus. I took a picture of that bus of that sign, as it disturbed me. I never expected to return to that picture, but with the opportunity to speak tonight about the issue of the naming of the downtown station, I called upon that picture, and and the sign said, "Accessible by choice, not by chance." Now, I know a bit of my disability rights history, namely downtown at the corner of Broadway and Colfax here in Denver, where 19 people with disabilities surrounded a bus and detained it to capture the attention that less dramatic measures could not. So that sign plastered above me on the bus struck me at best as a partial truth. I have felt quite moved this evening to hear the warm and generous mention of my community multiple times, how the tenor has changed over the decades. So to return to that sign above me on the bus that read, "Accessible by choice, not by chance." A very interesting claim, more than 3 decades post passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I'd like to echo my fellow members of the disability community to say that one way in which RTD can willingly support the disability community at present is to choose the moniker Wade Blank Station for the downtown transit hub. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Kroll, are there any further speakers?
There are not.
With no other participants in the queue, we thank all of those who have participated this evening to share their comments with this board. We will close the participation period at this time. We will now move to the next item on our agenda, which is external entities reports. This month, we have one external entity report. That report is from the Access-a-Ride Paratransit Advisory Committee, commonly referred to as APAC. We're joined by Ms. Julie Jennings. So please begin your report when you are ready.
Thank you for having me. I present to you a summary for the December APAC meeting. Fare changes. Live discount applied to Access-a-Ride. Monica Triple Harnicky, the Senior Manager of Revenue, provided information on the Live program and application process. QRide software, the route match replacement. QRide developers are finalizing the data transfer conduits between QRide and route match to allow RTD to retain and transfer data between systems. Once complete, RTD will test QRide on Saturdays, transferring back to the route match system on Sundays. If tests go well, RTD will start testing Sundays and then roll out testing to weekdays. Access on demand, clarification on multi-stop trips. A request was made to allow customers to use access on demand for multi-stop purposes. Currently, Uber is the only company who has the technical ability to accommodate the request. RTD will continue to explore this ask and reach out to the other vendors for comment. Community engagement process on vehicle satisfaction for future vehicle purchases. The RTD marketing department will embark on a robust year-long community engagement process to gather feedback from all types of RTD customers on the current Access-a-Ride vehicles in order to decide on their next purchase. From the APEC membership, request members to encourage others to apply to fill 2 empty seats on the committee. RTD requested APEC members to reach out to the community and let people know that there are 2 APEC seats available, which they can apply for. The effort to rename the Civic Center Station after Wade Blank. Joe Beaver from the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition updated the group that 24 state legislators signed on to the support renaming the Civic Center Station. APAC concern. When pickup is late, clarification was added to the customer guide. The Access-a-Ride customer guide was edited to clarify that if a vehicle is or will be delayed outside the pickup window, a customer may cancel the trip without it being considered a service abuse. APAC suggestion, build in a real-time feedback mechanism for Access-a-Ride trips. RTD asked for APAC suggestion regarding real-time feedback. RTD will work with marketing and the survey departments to develop draft ideas. APAC suggestion, improve sensitivity of staff to customer needs and experience of the service. Most recently, operators received training on Title VI and serving non-English speakers. The training included best practices for working with non-English speakers and translators, connections between civil rights and the public, non-discrimination, and the complaint process. APAC contractor liaisons. Currently, the liaisons are service contractor general managers. The general managers use their regular driver safety meetings to share APAC suggestions and concerns with drivers and to gather feedback. This concludes my summary. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings, for your report and your service on the advisory committee. We'll now move to the audit committee report. Committee Chair Deschel, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think we did committee reports earlier this month, right? It was just the election. So the audit committee met on December 20th to briefly review internal audit plan to date, and most of it was focused on cybersecurity and held in executive session. The audit committee will again meet on February 15th at 10 a.m. As a reminder, we have internal audit. We will be receiving an update on our internal audit plan and how that is progressing, including the items which staff has agreed to already meet by that date certain. We will be receiving an update from external audit, who is going to be kicking off will soon be kicking off their annual external audit. And then some directors may have received outreach from the Office of the State Auditor. Thank you to those of you who have participated. That is an audit against prior state audits and recommendations evaluating board governance and compliance with state law. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Chair Deschel. I'll now turn to the Finance and Planning Committee report. Committee Chair Tisdale, do you have anything you would like to report?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Finance and Planning Committee met on January the 16th. The minutes of that meeting are found at pages 29 and 30 of your board packet. At that meeting, we elected committee officers and discussed the draft work plan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Committee Chair Tisdale. And now to the Operations and Safety Committee. Committee Chair Whitmore, do you have anything you would like to report?
Briefly, sir, thank you. Just like to say congratulations to Treasurer Bouquet, who has a second role in leadership as Vice Chair of the Committee, Operations and Safety. I look forward to working with him. We had 2 items of action, the group of 32 fixed route contract TransDev, which was passed by a 4-3 vote and is on our recommended action agenda later this evening. We also unanimously passed the revised drug and alcohol policy that was needing updated from 2013, and that is on unanimous consent agenda. We did some brainstorming on work plan matters, and we will meet as a small committee on the 5th of February with staff to proceed with adding agenda items to the work plan for that committee. And our next meeting will be a real sweetheart, Wednesday, February 14th, 5:30 p.m. Mountain.
Thank you, Committee Chair Whitmore. We will be there. And finally, we'll move to the Performance Committee report. Committee Chair Catlin, do you have anything you would like to report?
Briefly, we do have one item on the unanimous consent agenda, which is the 6th Amendment to the Employment Agreement with General Manager and CEO Deborah Johnson. And then we have 2 recommended actions. One of them is for the board to approve the GM and CEO performance assessment framework, and the other is the 7th Amendment to the GM CEO contract, which moves to a performance-based framework or compensation framework consistent with the GM CEO compensation philosophy. And we also have not calendared it yet, but we will be working with GM CEO Johnson, as well as Chief People Officer Pileggi, Vice Chair Lynn Geisinger, and myself to work on, and Jack Kroll, excuse me, to develop this committee's work plan for the year. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Committee Chair Catlin. We'll now move to the approval of the board meeting minutes and committee reports. The board and committee minutes were included in the board packet. Are there any corrections from directors for the minutes to be approved this evening? Unless there's any objection to considering the minutes all at the same time, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes for the following meetings? It's quite a bit. November 28th, 2023 board meeting, December 4th, 2023 performance committee, December 4th, 2023 special board meeting, December 20th, 2023 audit committee, January 9th, 2024, special board meeting. January 11th, 2024, executive committee. January 16th, 2024, Finance and Planning Committee. January 16th, 2024, Performance Committee. January 17th, 2024, Operations and Safety Committee. January 17th, 2024, Performance Committee. And January 24th, 2024, Executive Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Bouquet.
Your Treasurer Bouquet, do I have a second?
Second, Deschel.
Director Deschel as the second. Director Geisinger has noted a couple clerical changes that the board office will be making with respect to these minutes. Is there any further discussion on this motion? I'll now call for the vote to approve the minutes with the, and are there any no votes on this action? All right, seeing none with 14 aye votes and 0 no votes and 0 abstentions, the motion passes. We'll now move on to the chair's report, followed by the general manager's report. Colleagues, I'd like to keep this relatively simple and general this evening. First of all, thank you for entrusting me with the leadership and stewardship of this board in the year ahead in 2024. As we are all accountable to the people who placed us in this boardroom, so too will I be accountable to each of you and to everybody across our RTD team and family. General Manager and CEO Johnson has been continuing to motivate the entire RTD team to view itself as one RTD. I thank her for this call, and I'd like to take the moment to remind all of us on the board and on the RTD family that we are indeed one team. We will not achieve perfection this year, nor will we in any year. And if it's anything I've learned, it's that a destination or a finish line is often an illusion. It's our unified pursuit of greatness and continual pursuit where we may shine. I'd like to highlight that from January 13th through January 16th, we had an interesting event. Average temperatures for consecutive days remained below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and actually in some parts of our district reached -20. During this time, RTD acted as one. Whether it is increased staffing levels or folks being available to double down and go the extra mile, we worked across this team to ensure the safety of our customers as well as to minimize service impacts. This may not look like much from afar, but it is a great deal. Our team did accomplish both of these objectives, maximizing safety and minimizing inconvenience. It's times like these that our team shines, and I'd like to thank all of those who were involved in that effort. We also heard during public comment tonight the implementation of a new fare structure. Not only was this an historic first for the agency, given that we lowered it, it's noteworthy that it went off without any big problems. Again, this comes from the team working truly as one RTD. We all sit in different seats, we all do different things, we all have a very small part of this, and I thank you to everybody for being a part of that. Unfortunately, we live in times of very heightened perceived division, and I find that the word they is often being used when the word should in fact be we. Let us remember that this group at RTD is in fact a we. I'll go further. We are not alone. Our regional community, which continually shares its views around transit with us, as it should, is also part of our collective we. I'd like to just note that this past month, I had the privilege of working with Second Vice Chair Geisinger in the collaboration of drafting an op-ed that was published in the Denver Post, the Boulder Daily Camera, and the Longmont Times Call. In it, RTD is reminding our community that not only have we had recent successes, but we face a great many challenges, and the only way we can get through them is together with our community. Throughout the year, this board and this team at RTD has my commitment that I will continually remind us here on this board, as well as our entire community, the collective us of the big issues we face in this near term that are threats to our long-term success. One is ensuring the well-being and personal security of our team members out there delivering service every day. Another is tackling vital deferred maintenance projects that I wish I could say we were alone on in the United States, but that need to be addressed to ensure the investments of our community remain intact and to safeguard our system. And finally, is to encourage this region to engage in a robust dialogue around how we can diversify and bolster the resources that come into transit to ensure a transit future. We are fortunate here that we are not one of the transit agencies facing a fiscal cliff. However, our time is limited. Looking out on a long-term horizon, we have challenges to address to ensure that we maintain our service and increase it. I think we need to engage in that discussion as opposed to falling into tired arguments about how we continually reallocate the precious resources that we have. Speaking to that latter point, finally, this past month, I've had the pleasure to continue working with our revenue diversification group, and I'm pleased to confirm that we will have some recommendations and thoughts coming forward as to where to take that group to this board forthcoming to our Finance and Planning Committee meetings. With that, I'd like to again say a sincere thank you to my colleagues for entrusting me here, and again, state that I intend to be fully accountable to each of you. Please hold me as such. I will for now hand off to our General Manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson, for her report. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and first and foremost, thank you for your report and acknowledgement of this collective effort. We're all people that comprise this agency, and we do so with the utmost intent of being good fiduciaries, delivering public transportation services as the residents of this region expect. So thank you, we're here with you. With that, good evening once again to everyone, board members, and to all who are assembled. I am Deborah Johnson, the General Manager and CEO. This evening, I will share with you a few highlights of activities and strategic endeavors in which I have engaged since the most recent monthly board meeting, our regular scheduled board meeting on Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. This report and the activities I'm citing herein are centered around the agency's strategic priorities, as well as the 2023-2024 strategic initiatives of Back to Basics, People Power, and a welcoming transit environment. Regarding community value, I will share an overview of meetings and events in which I have engaged, including a quarterly progress review meeting related to the East Colfax Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project, the annual retreat of the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board, on which I serve as ex officio member, the Commuter Rail CEO Seminar hosted by the American Public Transportation Association, the Aurora Rotary Club's 2023 State of the City Luncheon, the annual legislative breakfast held by Commuting Solutions and the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition, and a meeting with representatives from Sage Hospitality Group regarding renovations of Denver Union Station historic building that are currently underway. Regarding customer excellence, I will discuss recent efforts to restore service on the Southeast Light Rail Corridor following an incident wherein a light rail train became disabled while in revenue service. Speaking to employee ownership, I will share information regarding operational details related to the extreme cold weather event that occurred 2 weeks ago. And rounding out, I will briefly touch upon Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Relating to community value, on Wednesday, November 29th, representatives from the Federal Transit Administration, Region 8, met with project partners for the East Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Project to conduct a quarterly progress report. I, along with Cindy Terwilliger, who serves as the Regional FTA Administrator, Adam Phipps, the Director of Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, discussed overarching project updates, and staff presented more granular information regarding the project status, including the status of procurements, third-party agreements, project controls, and a 90-day look ahead and the overall roadmap for that critical project. From Thursday, November 30th through Friday, December 1st, I participated in the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board's annual retreat, which took place right down the street at the Oxford Hotel. The purpose of the meeting was to further develop an approach to the board's process regarding forthcoming decision-making relative to the 2024 district work plan implementation that includes the service development plan, and where there's a nexus quite naturally with our Northwest Rail Peak feasibility study in relationship to other elements in bringing intercity passenger rail full circle to the Front Range. The following week, I traveled to Washington, D.C. from Tuesday, December 5th through Thursday, Friday 8th to attend the Commuter Rail CEO workshop hosted by the American Public Transportation Association. Participants in the workshop engaged in discussions related to commuter rail legislative priorities, community partnerships, safety challenges, and resiliency, and the future of commuter rail, among other topics, and took part in informational sessions offered by representatives from the FRA, which included the Deputy Administrator Jennifer Mitchell, and representation from the Passenger Rail Advisory Council. As Vice Chair of the Commuter Rail CEO Committee on Thursday, December 7th, I participated in meetings along with other seminar attendees on Capitol Hill with congressional committee staffers, whereby I had the opportunity to engage directly and speak about our being a collective RTD regarding the need for legislative action for insurance premiums, as well as operations and maintenance grant funding pursuant to positive train control systems. On Friday, December 15th, I, along with Directors Broom and Tisdale, Government Relations Officer Michael Davies, and Board Office Executive Manager Jack Kroll, attended the Aurora Rotary Club 2023 State of the City Luncheon, in which we heard from the mayor about what lies ahead for 2024. On Tuesday, January 9th, I, along with then Chair Lynn Geisinger and second Vice Chair Eric Davidson and Peggy Catlin and Director Michael Guzman and Government Relations Officer Michael Davies, as well as other very critical staff members who are engaged along that area in the Northwest, attended the 15th Annual Legislative Breakfast hosted by Commuting Solutions and the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners. Governor Polis presented the keynote address, and Transportation Committee Chair Senator Faith Winter and Representative Meg Froelich both gave remarks. Additionally, I, along with CDOT Executive Director Shoshana Liu and Ann Roginski, who serves as the Executive Director of the Colorado Association of Transit Agencies, better known as CASTA, participated in a panel discussion moderated by Kathleen Brackey, representing Boulder County. In the panel was entitled Transit Aspirations for Colorado's. I, along with fellow panelists, engaged in conversations related to the future of transit here in Colorado, talking about the different elements that have impacted us and how are we working collectively to bring greater mobility options to the region, as well as, quite naturally, the synergies with commuter rail and intercity passenger rail service. Related to customer excellence, as we heard during the public comment period, and as I previously reported to the board, this past Wednesday, January 24th, at approximately 1:25 p.m., I remember this because we were in the executive committee, I was made aware of a light rail consist incident on the E line on the southeast corridor north of Southmore Station. Given that both the E and H line trains traverse the segment of the corridor between Southmore and Yale stations where the consist was immobilized in order to safely coordinate bi-directional train movements along a single, I want to emphasize, a single length of track in this area, service frequencies for both of those light rail lines along the corridor was reduced to 45 minutes at that time. Considering that this incident is currently being thoroughly investigated, it is too early at this point to draw conclusions as to any causal or contributing factors. As such, I am here not to discuss details related to the investigation, but rather to share details regarding service restoration and the impacts. So long as I serve as RTD's General Manager and CEO, I will continue to err on the side of employee and customer safety over transit service delivery. Safety is paramount. And I must stress that none of the 17 customers aboard the consist nor the light rail operator were injured as a result of this incident. That said, following preliminary review by a cross-matrix team, it appears the light rail consist may have struck debris on the track, causing damage to the vehicle such that it cannot be towed back to the light rail operating facility by another operable vehicle. Preliminary plans to recover the vehicle were developed over the course of Thursday, January 25th, the day following the incident. At that time, I, in consultation with the Assistant General Manager of Rail Operations, made the decision to keep the consist in place throughout the revenue day on Thursday until such time as a comprehensive recovery plan could be developed with the intent to commence the work the following day. As nature would have it, however, snow accumulations from the evening of Thursday, January 25th into the morning of Friday, January 26th delayed any recovery efforts. Note that each light rail vehicle, a light rail car by itself, weighs 90,000 pounds. The average standard automobile weighs 4,000 pounds. So moving one of these vehicles is the equivalent of moving 22 and a half standard automobiles, a task that cannot be done haphazardly. As one might imagine, moving a 90,000-pound vehicle that has become immobilized on a segment of light rail track requires significant people power, and to do this safely requires tremendous coordination and effort. Suffice to say, attempting to do this in an environment with suboptimal weather conditions would not be a prudent course of action. Additionally, weekend staffing levels are not conducive to this type of major endeavor. So, the schedule for recovery was slated to commence during daylight hours on Monday, January 29th, and rail operations personnel continued to meet frequently over the weekend to refine vehicle and service recovery plans. Conditions did not allow for the vehicle recovery effort to continue, conditions did allow for the vehicle recovery effort to continue on the morning of Monday, January 29th, which was just yesterday. As part of this monumental effort, crews were able to lift the damaged vehicle by way of a specialized jack, following which a brace was erected around the vehicle for support, and the damaged wheel set was removed and replaced with a new set so that it could be towed back to the light rail maintenance facility. For the board's awareness, the wheel sets, known as trucks, each weigh approximately 4 tons on their own. The crews began to move the vehicle at 4 p.m. and safely returned it to the yard at approximately 5:30 p.m. yesterday. I am pleased to report regular revenue service resumed this morning, Tuesday, January 30th, with the start of revenue service. And I would like to publicly acknowledge the crews who safely accomplished this heroic feat without additional incident. Further, I extend my thanks and appreciation to the customers for the patience that they have displayed during this time. To round out this report, I will now speak to the strategic priority of employee ownership. And Mr. Chair, you made reference to this during your report, but I would just like to add some additional fodder, if I may. Related to both customer excellence and the 2023-2024 strategic initiative of Back to Basics, as I shared with this body on Friday, January 26, I extend my thanks and commendations for the tremendous effort of employees and contractors in preparing for and responding to the historic cold weather event that took place beginning on Saturday, January 13th, and stretching through the morning of Tuesday, January 16th. Average daily temperatures, as we heard from you, Mr. Chair, during this time remained below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and at one point dropped to record lows of -15 degrees at Denver International Airport and -20 degrees Fahrenheit in other locations in the agency service area. Despite the severity of the weather conditions, employees reported experiencing predominantly minor challenges during this time, and crews performed admirably. And while minor weather-related vehicular accidents did occur, no known employee on-the-job injuries occurred as a result of the weather conditions. Throughout this time, the bus operations division was able to cover all runs except for 3 on Saturday, January 13th, 1 on Sunday, January 14th, and 5 on Monday, January 15th. Contracted bus service providers were able to cover all of its scheduled work despite a slight increase in employees unable to report for their scheduled shifts due to the inclement weather. Regarding rail operations, overall delays were minimal and ridership was light. The Rail Operations Division and Denver Transit Operations, our concessionaire, collectively operated 3,215 of the scheduled 3,395 trips. This equates to 94.7% overall on-time performance or service availability. Regarding public facilities, staff and contractors experienced a myriad of challenges due to the cold weather period, though most occurrences were minor, such as problems with the elevators and things of the like due to the temperatures. Related to the strategic initiative of welcoming transit environment, I and members of the leadership team went to RTD's district shops on Wednesday, January 10th to celebrate Law Enforcement Appreciation Day along with members of the Transit Police and Emergency Management Department. We collectively welcomed several new members of the sworn police force who had recently graduated from police academies and celebrated the rapid expansion of the Transit Police and Emergency Management Department. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will conclude my report. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity to present this to all of you this evening.
Thank you, Madam General Manager and CEO, for your report. I'll briefly ask if any directors have any questions for our General Manager and CEO, given her report.
I just have one clarification. I was trying to write down the numbers for the rail division and DTO operation of the trains. Did you say 2,315 or did you say 3,215 trips were operated? The first number.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
I stated that 3,215 of 3,395 scheduled trips, which equates to 94.7% overall service availability.
Thank you. Treasurer Bouquet, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I had the firsthand experience of riding the 45 minutes service of the E-line this weekend, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't getting several emails from my own constituents regarding the derailment, and I appreciate you speaking upon it. I just had a couple questions regarding it. So the first thing I would ask is regarding communication to our customers about those who would be stopping at the E line or stopping at one of the stations at the E or H line go to the Southeast Corridor. How were we communicating with customers that we were going on 45-minute delays?
Ms. Johnson, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the question, Director Bouquet. A couple of different elements in which we did. If one were to go to RTD's website and you look at schedules and there's a landing page that talks about service disruptions, there are information pertaining to the delays there. More specifically, we disseminated press advisories we were coordinating via the media, and if in fact somebody subscribes to the notification via RTD's app, they would get those notifications as well going forward. And Mr. Summers is present, and if I have misstated anything or no. So those are the different conduits in which we leverage. Thank you.
Could I continue asking questions? Thank you very much. So, so obviously weather was a major factor when it came down to the delay of the recovery of the vehicle. Do we have a timeline when it comes down to, in general, if this were to occur in the future, how long would it take in general if weather wasn't, a factor? If there's, it's hard to talk with several factors, but in the case of a derailment such as this, what is our timeline with trying to actually get back to regular service?
Ms. Johnson, please.
Thank you very kindly. And so I want to qualify my response by offering some context. Derailment is qualified as when, the trucks or the wheels on the train leave the track. And so there could be a myriad of different derailments. So if I were to answer this question, I'm going to talk specifically about the incident that occurred last Wednesday, because if in fact we had weather conditions that were more conducive, we would have removed that rail car Friday morning, considering that this incident took place on Wednesday afternoon. We had to discern what was happening relative to what we could do to go in and get that rail car moved. And so optimally, in reference to strategizing with the recovery plan, conversing with a myriad of different individuals within the organization, from our safety and environmental compliance, from maintenance of way personnel relative to rail operations personnel, we would have most likely removed that Friday morning, recognizing the time of day. Now, if it happened at 4 a.m. in the morning, one day we have had an opportunity with daylight and optimal weather conditions of moving a car, so I can't give you, it's not a cookie cutter approach.
Okay, final question. Thank you very much, Chair. What efforts did we use in this case scenario, or potentially like a future case scenario, where we would start having the conversation of we're on 45-minute service? Do we start looking into options for rubber tire service via shuttle or via bus? Was that in consideration, and or would that be in consideration for future incidents that would be similar to what had occurred? And that's my final question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please go ahead.
So it's a multitude of different things that come into play when we talk about leveraging a bus bridge. Quite naturally, we had a track. It's not as if we had a single track. We had double track, so we were able to have throughput in that area. When the incident occurred, we were still moving trains through that area. If in fact we had no other means of redundancy, then we could possibly leverage a bus bridge, but that comes down to people power, because what we need to do in order to leverage supplemental service, we would have to ensure that we had readily available operators on extra board. We have to identify vehicles. In light of where we were at that point in time, it was most prudent to actually adjust the headways and have throughput in that area of a single track. So all those different issues come into play when we make an informed decision relative to service interruptions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Bouquet. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Seeing no more questions, we'll move on. I just, again, would like to highlight, thank you for 94.7%. That's wonderful. Thank you. With that, we're going to move to the unanimous consent agenda listed under section 16, actions A through, oh, sorry, I see Director Broom. Sorry, sir. Go ahead, please.
Oh, pull 17B.
Okay. So on the unanimous consent agenda, actions 16A through B, B has been pulled from the agenda. Our unanimous consent agenda, therefore, is the drug and alcohol policy amendments, one action. Are there any further changes, discussion, or questions about these items that you would have polling, I guess, the one item now? Would anyone like to pull that item from the unanimous consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Whitmore.
Second, Bouquet.
Heard the movement is Whitmore, the second is Bouquet. Are there any no votes on this action? All right, seeing none, we have 14 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. The motion passes. Given that the request was made to item B, I would like to note that we have several related items on our agenda. So while we would typically move what was item B to our immediate next recommended action, I'm going to go ahead and make an insertion. I will hearken back to it and name the recommended action when we are there. So with that, and that specifically is our 6th amendment to the general manager and CEO employment agreement. We're going to now move into our recommended actions section. There are now 7 recommended actions on the agenda tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the 2024 committee appointments. This is for the Board of Directors to ratify the 2024 standing committee appointments. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Deschel.
Second.
I have Deschel as the movement, Catlin as the second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Are there any no votes on the motion? Seeing none, again, we have 14 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. The motion will pass. The next action is item D. This is the Group 32 Fixed Route Service Contract. This is for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter into a contract with Transdev Services Incorporated for the provision of fixed route services as described herein. This contract is for 3 years with 2 one-year options for a total of 5 years at a total not to exceed cost of $155,545,539 Additionally, RTD will reimburse the contractor's direct fuel costs in an amount estimated to be $13,085,531 over 5 years. The total 5-year not to exceed cost for services and fuel is $168,631,070. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
I heard the movement as Broom and the second as Tisdale. Is there any discussion on this motion? Director Deschel, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. If we could just get a recap from the chair or the vice chair as to, 4 to 3 is a pretty narrow pass out of committee. If we could just get a quick recap on the pros and cons, or if those directors could speak to that, that would be appreciated so we could have the full understanding of something when it passes on such a narrow margin.
Yeah, thank you, Director Deschel, and I'll note that we had a number of folks present for that discussion. I'll first open to the chair of the committee, Chair Whitmore, for his feedback, as well as I'd like to, after him, open the floor to our General Manager and CEO Johnson to provide her remarks, recapping some of the discussion as well. So first, Chair Whitmore, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I believe, and I will summarize in the best way I know how, but I certainly would ask my vice chair to opine as well. But yes, 4-3 vote. Most of the concern in the negative side of the tally was on the kind of quick decision-making process and lack of perhaps more discussion time by those that voted in the opposition. So I'm going to keep it very brief. I would defer to Vice Chair Bouquet for his comments as well, or at least correct me.
I'll move to Treasurer Bouquet, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and then thank you very much, Director Whitmore, for that comments. I believe that summarizes it pretty well, is when it just kind of regards to, I want to speak for the directors who were voting no on this, but just regards of kind of the idea of transparency when it comes down to it. Again, our main job when it comes down to directors is to be good stewards of our bosses ultimately, which is our, which, you know, are our taxpayers. I don't want to speak for all the directors who voted no on that, but again, I think it was more of a conversation of going with transparency, and then also with a conversation of how quickly maybe the process was. I'll defer to Director Harwick, though.
Director Harwick, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I voted no, and I will also vote no tonight. I'm sure the contract is perfectly fine, but it does deal with the timeliness of it, for one. And two, also, like, it's nearly $160 million contract, and I get that it's number 32, like we had 31 prior. But I still think it's important for us to ask hard questions and also just voice concerns, even though it is something we've done repeatedly before. And also, my other thing is, you know, should we continue to be contracting out all of our service? Like, can we do this in-house, and are we better suited to be doing that? And should we consider doing that in the future? So maybe not everything in-house, but I do think it's something we should continue to you know, do that when possible, instead of giving the business out to a private corporation.
Thank you, Director Harwick. And before turning to General Manager and CEO Johnson to see if there's anything you'd like to add, I would like to note on Director Harwick, your point that one of the items in discussion that came up, aside from the timeliness of contract review by this board, was the policy matter and consideration regarding our contracted services themselves. I'd like to just offer my comments as chair that I believe this is a valid question for us to ask on a go-forward basis, on a look-ahead basis. I believe in the committee, for those who weren't present, a question was asked around what is the cost-benefit analysis. I do think it's incumbent upon this board to always be looking at those things, looking through the windshield, and what we might look at ahead. So I would certainly ask the committee chair Whitmore and Vice Chair Bouquet, to the extent that there is availability in the work plans this year, to consider how that may be able to fit as a discussion on a go-forward basis. So thank you, Director Harwick, for your comments. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to our General Manager and CEO Johnson, if there's anything you would like to add to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to offer some comments. I am in alignment with the comments that were made by the Chair, of the Vice Chair, and Director Harwick. I think those were spot on relative to looking at, from a policy perspective, a cost-benefit analysis of what may be best for the organization holistically. I think that would be very prudent to do so. If in fact, at this point in time, RTD directly wouldn't be able to provide these services due to the lack of facilities and things of the like. While we may own the vehicles in and of themselves, we still need the people power and we need facilities in which to house them. So I think it would be prudent to assess going forward, while it's written in statute, that we can contract up to 58%. That is the ceiling, not the floor, and recognizing that we are undertaking a comprehensive assessment relative to facilities and fleet. This is a springboard that gives us a great opportunity, and I referenced that during the course of the committee discussion as well. And I will yield the floor with that. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, and thank you for noting the Fleet and Facilities Transition Plan as an important time to look at that. Director Rosenthal, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And ordinarily, I wouldn't pipe in, but I would like to say that, this contract comes, as was mentioned, that, this is a contractor that we've been working with for quite some time. So there is that track record of working with this contractor. And secondly, that it's not just quote unquote last minute. This is something where there's been a deliberative, systemic approach to the bidding process, that there is a system within RTD for bidding. This was reviewed by a panel. These are experts with decades in the field at RTD who have made the decision and the recommendation to the CEO and to us. So this is something where there's a lot of process behind this that maybe doesn't meet the eye or doesn't maybe make it onto the page of a memo. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosenthal, for noting the process. I think key questions for a board such as ours is, was there a process? Was it fair? Was it followed? Was it reviewed? So thank you for noting that. Director Deschel, I'll go to you next.
Thank you, and thank you for those of you for entertaining. I think it's important, especially when something's tight, we have the full picture for the full board. Question for whomever would like to take it, which is, given we're contracting out 45% of fixed route service, do we separately track on-time delivery between the two, between what we own in-house versus do we have the ability to do that?
Mr. Chair, if I may, yes, we do, and I believe I referenced that in my report. I appreciate the clarification, but yes, recognizing that we may have a contractor on the side of those vehicles that says RTD, so we're ultimately responsible. Hence, I appreciate the due diligence of this board and in light of discussions that have ensued. But yes, but when we report out on-time performance, when you look, it'll say contractor, and we can delineate that because we get that information from our contractors, and we are aware because there are goals in which we have established, as we do internally as it relates to KPIs and what we do for mean distance between failure, on-time performance, service availability, and a myriad of others that I won't bore you with. But yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Director Deschel. Treasurer Bouquet, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it on the record, and I think Director Whitmer also noted this, that putting this in our work plan going forward as a committee for operations and safety is, again, just to help mitigate the concerns. I think that's going to be a discussion we have when we plan our work plan. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Bouquet. Seeing no further discussions or hand raised, I'm going to call for the vote. Given the nature of the discussion, of course, I will do a roll call vote for this particular item. Treasurer Bouquet.
No.
Director Broom.
Yes.
Director Busick.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Yes.
Director Deschel.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Yes.
Secretary Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
No.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Ruscia.
Respectfully, no.
Director Sloan.
Yes.
Director Tisdale.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
And this is Chair Davidson. I am a yes. I have 11 yes votes, 3 no votes, and 0 abstention or absent. With that, the motion does pass. At this time, we'll move back to our previously on the unanimous consent agenda, what was previously item B. We'll move into the 6th amendment to the general manager and CEO employment agreement. This is for the board of directors to adopt a 6th amendment to the employment agreement with general manager and chief executive officer Deborah A. Johnson to increase her base salary by 1.8% from $395,120 to $402,325 effective November 9th, 2023, consistent with the board adopted general manager and CEO compensation philosophy and compensation base range. Do I have a motion?
Buzek, so moved.
A second?
Second, Whitmore.
I have Busick as the motion, Whitmore as the second. I'll now open up for, is there any discussion or further questions on this item? Director Deschel, I see your hand first on the screen.
Yeah, this is just is there a reason when we have two amendments to the contract that they're being considered separately as opposed to together with two related items?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. They are two separate items, although they did happen to coincidentally occur at the same time. The first is with what came out of the base compensation range adoption, as well as the compensation philosophy adoption. The second, specifically the 7th amendment we'll be considering this evening, is with respect to the performance framework, which we'll be visiting here. So two separate amendments were required to do this, given that there were two fundamentally different concepts. Thank you for the question and clarification. Director Ruscia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Per the most recently available data, which is in the board packet, I think it's reasonable to infer that our general manager and CEO would receive this year, even without the amendment before us, about $420,000 plus or minus in cash compensation alone, and that is in addition to other benefits. Our compensation philosophy, when referencing a midpoint, does not say base salary, but rather a compensation package. Additionally, per the Office of the State Auditor's recommendations, it was noted that directors should receive tally sheets listing the total contract costs before entering into a contract or a contract amendment with our general manager and CEO. And to be clear, I'm not talking about this specific general manager and CEO. That auditor's report was made in March of 2010. Unfortunately, while we did get a snapshot of some of those costs, we were not afforded that full picture. And that is a departure from previously established board policy. And so with those data points in mind, I'm going to respectfully vote no tonight. I do commend the general manager for her work. This is not about a performance appraisal. It is just, this is about the motion on the table, and it shouldn't be interpreted as anything else but that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ruscia. And just for the sake of the record, I believe the table being referenced was the packet page 103. And thank you for your comments. Are there further questions or discussion items before us on this? Director Rosenthal, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am a strong supporter of this 6th amendment. I do believe that our GM and CEO has been doing an admirable job and definitely does, quote, demonstrate internal equity, fairness, and transparency. And I think that we need to make sure to continue, quote, externally market competitive. And I think that in order to retain, encourage our CEO to continue to be our CEO, that we should at least reach the midpoint. And as you can see in the memo, the minimum is 292.6 thousand, and then the maximum is 512. And so we do need to get to at least to that midpoint and make sure that we are compensating her fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosenthal. I'll just note, as I've noted in the performance committees that we've discussed this at numerous times, this is an important move towards a data-driven approach, which is a start, not a finish. So I thank everybody for the work on that effort. With that, I will call for a roll vote, starting with Treasurer Bouquet.
Yes.
Director Broom.
No.
Director Busick.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Yes.
Director Deschel.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Yes.
Secretary Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Ruscia.
Respectfully, no.
Director Sloan.
Yes.
Director Tisdale.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
This is Chair Davidson. I too am a yes. That is 12 yes votes with two no votes, 0 abstentions or absent. The motion will pass. Thank you. Please bear with me for a moment while I get back to our regularly scheduled recommended actions. The next action is for the 2024 General Manager and CEO Performance Assessment Framework. This is for the Board of Directors to adopt a General Manager and CEO Performance Assessment Framework for the calendar year 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Rosenthal.
Second, Sloan.
I have the movement as Rosenthal, the second as Sloan. I'll ask if there's any discussion or questions on the item. I'd actually like to just start. We did a full presentation of this item, and the recommended action came through the executive committee this past month. Performance committee did have a discussion around this. The framework was then refined and brought forward to the executive committee for approval, and now the appearance on the agenda this evening. Again, I think this is an important step in the next, in the right direction of improving our general manager and CEO performance assessment framework. I would remind everybody that there was some robust discussion at the executive committee as well as at the performance committee on this. I would certainly encourage those with any questions after the fact to refer back to that. I think those will actually be important meetings for us to refer to as the performance committee continues its work ahead. With that, I'll open up the floor for any further discussion or questions on the item. Seeing none, and with Director Rosenthal's, Director Ruscia, go ahead. I'm way too dependent on this screen. Please go ahead, Director Ruscia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My mouse froze. So I did attend the executive committee last week and asked some questions. I had some concerns. I won't repeat them here. But one question that I did ask was, will the board participate in the 360 review process? And I also was seeking some more information as to our role in the review moving forward, as well as employee role. From that meeting, there was differing opinion, and I personally am not comfortable voting yes tonight on this framework, because while I 100% respect the work that is being done by the performance committee and our chair, and it's been done by our immediate past chair, I'm not comfortable on something that I feel is still a moving target. It's a work in progress. So because this is also contractual, I'm going to vote no tonight. And the other concern that I think I've shared, perhaps not on the record, is that I think we have, and not with poor intention, I think we have removed the customer and service delivery from this framework. We were not specific enough in how that was going to be addressed. And as a person whose family lived and died by the bus for many years. I just wasn't comfortable with that. But again, I do thank you for your work, and I'll respectfully be a no tonight.
Thank you, Director Ruscia. Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, as I look at this proposal, this amendment, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that we too are, trying to do our best by the agency, by our general manager and CEO, that we are also improving this process, that it's a work in progress, as was noted. However, I differ on the end result. This is something that both board members and Ms. Pileggi and our general manager and CEO have all worked collaboratively. We have heard this out in committee. This is not something that we do lightly. I think it really drills down on so many different expectations we have for our general manager and CEO, whether it's short-term, long-term performance goals that actually does keep our customers, our riders in mind. We don't exist except for our riders. So I don't know how anybody could look at this and not see that. So I'm so fully in support of this. I think it drills down. It has a point basis, a value basis, and many other ways that we can look to analyze this. So I ask that we please support it.
Thank you, Director Rosenthal. Director Deschel.
Yeah, thank you. I have just a practical question. A lot of the goals, which I appreciate, are binary, right? You either did or did not. The rail either is replaced or is not replaced. However, the points attributed to them are meets expectations or exceeds expectations. And so you have the 12 points, 6 of which are only there if you exceed. From my perspective and from what I can tell, if you do what you said you were going to do, you met expectations. And so just curious as to how you all decide on that, because another interpretation would be there's 12 total points available, 50% of the goal you hit, the other 50% of the goal you didn't, you would get 6 points. And so just from a practical standpoint, I'm curious if there was more discussion on how that works when you set sort of binary goals, which I appreciate. You hit your goal or you don't. I'm not a big fan of in-progress goals at the company level. So if we could just hear a little bit on that and what that would actually look like, that'd be great.
Thank you for the question, Director Deschel. I'm happy to take the first portion of that, and because I'll reference General Manager and CEO Johnson, I'm happy to open the floor to her as well. But I would note that one of the key discussion we had was that our General Manager and CEO shared that the intent of her goals was that she was presenting on met expectations. And one thing that was heard very loud and clear, I think, last year by this board was that we wanted a framework that allowed for a met and exceeds expectations and some flexibility there, for which there is still, while this is an objective measure, there's still some subjectivity at each individual director when the assessment comes as to how you might exceed expectations. There was a discussion around, perhaps it's a matter of timing, perhaps it's a matter of overachieving in a number of different areas. And this allows, the framework is attempting to embrace where we previously had strictly binary math tied to strictly binary goals, which were our Net Promoter Score, more long-term metrics. This framework was contemplating having still specific and measurable goals, but allowing some flexibility in the assessment of those. So I'd like to just open up to General Manager and CEO Johnson if there's anything she'd like to remind the board of what she had presented when discussing the goals and how they meet expectations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Deschel, for the question. Chair Davidson captured it because it's the expectation. Here it is. You meet the goal, right? And so to the point that he further raised, there could be, extenuating factors whereby I don't meet the goal, then I didn't meet expectations. But I think what's pivotal here and what's being presented is that there were discussions that ensued relative to what is my core job, right? Because these goals are for naught if in fact I am not doing what you all hired me to do on a day-to-day basis, which is general transit management, internal and external relationships, board interaction, and things of the like, because we are a people-driven business. We are people serving people and people in the people business. So recognizing where we are, there is flexibility with some of you relative to assessing what that may be relative to, i.e. welcoming transit environment, aggressively pursuing legislation, or vigorously, I should qualify it as, not aggressively. So that may not be met, that's fine, but let me be clear that I am going to raise in every instance possible, in every form, which I have done continuously, is that I can't provide an optimal work environment for all transit employees, and that plagues me. And so as we talk about the other portion of the goal, which I could only meet halfway, would be assessing our operating facilities. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about an intermodal transit hub. I'm talking about whereby we have employees that have voiced their concern and fear about trying to get to their workplace. So I give that as an example to say that I may not meet that goal, but I am going to do everything in my power by being adamant about providing an optimal work environment and rallying others to have increased penalties, or what we can do within our control, which is utilizing CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, when somebody is going to their work location. Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager and CEO Johnson. And Director Deschel, thank you for the question. And did that answer your questions? Thank you. I'll now move to First Vice Chair Catlin and Chair of the Performance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, with regard to the 360 review, the discussion that ensued with it would be that those people that would be canvassed for this review would be mutually agreed upon by General Manager, CEO, and the board. Furthermore, by default, this board is responsible for the performance evaluation of the General Manager and CEO. So we have the final say, regardless of how we participate, and I suspect there will be participation among board members in the 360 review, we will still have the ultimate say. So that's my comment.
Thank you, First Vice Chair Catlin. Second Vice Chair Geisinger, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, I appreciate your comments, Director Ruscia. I think this is such a big improvement of where we were before, and I think so many of us have been very unhappy with it, and with the way, the original way the reviews were set up. We traded out in the contract, General Manager Johnson was entitled to an uncapped COLA, and that's not happening anymore. We've moved to a performance review. And I believe, and again, I'm speaking for myself, but what we'll be doing at the retreat and early this year, I think, is looking at KPIs for the agency and performance for the agency. I think that's a really important piece. I think the fact that we'll be having the Performance Committee meeting with Ms. Johnson along the way to talk through the performance of the agency is also a very important piece. But it's a work in progress, and I think not perfect, but we shouldn't let it be the enemy of the good, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair Geisinger. Secretary Guzman, please.
Recognizing the amount of negotiation that probably went into this to get to this point, I would just like to extend an invitation and a request from our General Manager to inform us about whether she feels confident in this motion that faces the board, as she is the employee to whom it refers.
Thank you, Secretary Guzman. General Manager, CEO Johnson, anything you'd like to share?
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments, Secretary Guzman. Could you qualify what I mean by confident relative to what's before you?
Do you find it acceptable?
Yes, I find it acceptable, or we would not be presenting it this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to get that on record.
Thank you. At this time, seeing no further discussion, I will call again for a roll vote. Starting with Treasurer Bouquet.
Yes.
Director Broom.
No.
Director Busick.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Yes.
Director Deschel.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Yes.
Secretary Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Ruscia.
Abstain.
Is that an abstention or a no vote? Is it an abstention?
Abstention.
Director Sloan,
Yes.
Director Tisdale,
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
This is Chair Davidson. I am also a yes. That is 12 aye votes, 1 abstention, and none absent, and 1 no vote. The motion will pass.
But point of order.
Yes.
Historically, the boards received different, or maybe I'm just not recalling correctly, around abstentions. At certain points, we've been told you can only abstain if you have a conflict of interest. At other points, we've been told you can abstain regardless. Can we just, I'd like to better understand when you can and cannot abstain.
I'd like to call on General Counsel Snyder, if you're comfortable answering the question, please. Thank you for the question, Director DeShell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Melanie Snyder, General Counsel. Yes, typically a director would only be abstaining in the event of a conflict of interest, and we don't want to necessarily go into details. If a director has decided to abstain, I don't think it's appropriate to talk through the basis for the abstention, because that could essentially void the fact why they're abstaining in the first place. But yes, that would be the general recommendation and practice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, General Counsel Snyder. Thank you for the question, Director DeShell. That motion will pass. We will move to the next recommended action. This is for the 7th amendment to the General Manager and CEO Employment Agreement. This is for the Board of Directors to adopt a 7th amendment to the employment agreement with General Manager and Chief Executive Officer Deborah A. Johnson to establish the 2024 Pay for Performance Framework consistent with the board-adopted General Manager CEO compensation philosophy. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Bouquet.
Second, Sloan.
The motion as Bouquet, the second as Sloan. We'll open up for discussion. I just would remind everyone, this really works hand in hand with that framework. The intent here was to codify the framework that we just passed into a contract amendment with for the General Manager and CEO. With that, any questions or discussion on this item? Seeing, Director Tisdale, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, let me turn off my assisted listening device. I still do not like the write-up that there's a 1% salary increase if the general manager scores 0 points. And that's at page 140 of the board packet. And that's, I just think the optics of that are bad. And so if you look at page 140, you will see it says 0 points, you get a 1% raise. And if that could have been tweaked somehow, I would have been happier with it. Secondly, I have not, but it's because I don't think I've given this enough time. I have not seen that everything that is recited in the board report and articulated as you have addressed is somehow encapsulated in the 12 lines of text that are included at page 143 of the board report in the operative section 2 of this 7th amendment. But I will take that on faith, but I do express my concern over, as I say, the optics. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. I'd like to just briefly respond. I certainly appreciate that. And this is the point where I would mention what Second Vice Chair Geisinger had alluded to with the release of the uncapped automatic cost of living adjustment. And this was a byproduct of negotiation in moving the adjusted base salary computation to strictly the pay for performance model, which was what that came from. So thank you for noting that for the record. And now I'd also just like to address that in the agreement itself. Thank you for that. There was some discussion with General Counsel Snyder around how to best capture some of these changes. And what we identified was the short-term incentives, which are contemplated by the agreement, include an adjusted base salary, a long-term incentive. The board has the ability to set that long-term incentive payment, I'm sorry, not long-term, excuse me, the one-time incentive payment has the ability to set that at 0 and set the adjusted base salary at the numbers that are provided by the scoring system. So that's ultimately what was done. It ended up being a simpler amendment because of some of the other tools we had available in the contract. General Counsel Snyder, just open the floor to you if there's anything you'd like to add to that or clarify for the sake of the record.
Pardon me. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so to address the concerns raised by Director Tisdale, the contract, so the board report on packet page 140, we have 3 bullet points there. So one talks about establishing the pay for performance and the adjusted base salary range. That's captured in Exhibit D to the contract or proposed contract amendment on packet page 147. The second bullet point with respect to the requirement that the board conduct a total compensation study and take appropriate action by October 31st. That is reflected on packet page 143 in the red line to subsection 2. And then the last bullet point with respect to removing the automatic uncapped COLA, that's captured in packet page 144 at the top of that page.
Thank you, General Counsel Snyder, for reading that into the record.
You're welcome.
Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So speaking of the study that we would conduct or contract for someone to conduct, sort of my question is also actually for you, Mr. Chair, and also the chair of the Performance Committee. If you don't mind describing a little bit more why that study is necessary and the prior study that has been done and why this one is necessary. I fully support doing it. I'm just saying, could you maybe describe a little bit more why we need to do this in order to update the data on which we're doing our compensation?
Thank you, Director Rosenthal. I think you're referring to the compensation study that would be done as part of what's being amended. Yes, thank you. So the reasoning for that is to ensure we remain in alignment with our compensation philosophy of remaining market competitive. It's also in response to things that have been flagged as previously noted by the Office of the State Auditor. This is bringing a data-driven approach to how we set our base salary range and also our total compensation package. What we had ultimately agreed to in the 7th Amendment with the General Manager and CEO is to conduct another compensation analysis this year and to act, meaning that we will convene and review the results of that compensation analysis as well as how it fits with our compensation philosophy. The reason for the need for it is that the market is moving and continually moving and changing. The Gallagher report by which we acted for the base salary range and ultimately the move to midpoint is now quite aged in terms of this market. Also, several questions have been raised by members of this board and members of the Performance Committee regarding how the compensation analysis was conducted. Our Chief People Officer, Charlene Pelagi, who has been a tremendous ally in helping the Performance Committee in its work, was actually not even here when we first did the last compensation analysis. So there's some opportunity to improve how that's done. It's also very critical because of how quickly these things are aging in a competitive market, and also very important to General Manager and CEO Johnson, moving in a strict pay for performance and not looking at automatic cost of living adjustments. The intent of the cost of living adjustment, really at the General Manager and CEO levels, are we remaining competitive, not looking at consumer price index. So that's the reason for needing to update it, and certainly for future boards and this board, the work will never be done with this. It would be to continually revisit this data.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's an important one. Director Ruscia, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Requesting 2 points of information from council?
Please.
Thank you. So as noted, this potential, let me rephrase. Our general manager and CEO could receive between 1% and 7% of a performance-based increase under this amendment. And just so I understand, our current existing contract is 6% right now? Or, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
So the answer to your question is that's correct. Under the amendment, the GM and CEO would be eligible for between a 1% and 7% increase. The current contract, you're probably referring to that Exhibit B, that was referring to some prior performance periods. So under the contract each year, the board is supposed to consult with the GM and CEO and identify the proposed goals and as well as the distribution between the base and any incentive pay. So that's the action that you're taking right now. So it's 6% is not, there's nothing that's currently in place for performance year 2024.
Thank you, General Counsel, and please, Director Ruscia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, General Counsel. So if, very hypothetically, if the board did not take action tonight or this were not approved, does this mean that it would stay at the current status quo?
General Counsel.
Or, sir, may I rephrase
Oh,
my
please.
question?
Yes, please,
Okay,
Director Ruscia.
Thank you. Are we required to renegotiate every year these terms under the current contract?
So the answer to that question is no, you're not required to renegotiate the terms of the contract by any means. So your prior action was based on, so not the amendment to the contract, we're talking about the adoption of the framework. So that prior action was required by the contract amendment that you all did in last year. So the Fifth Amendment, you had to do that by the end of this year. This amendment that's before you is not a required amendment. It was something that was negotiated between the board and the GM and CEO. So things like removing the uncapped COLA, for example, that's absolutely not required. That was something that the parties negotiated.
Thank you, General Counsel. Director Ruscia, further questions?
Yes, one more. If, I guess, because there are certain parts of our framework that have yet to be determined, and there's reference to mutual agreement, what happens if we cannot come to an agreement? And are there certain deadlines, aside from the October deadline for the compensation analysis that we would have to meet? And I'm also asking because 2024 has already started.
General Counsel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question, Director Ruscia. So yes, under the contract annually, this board has to provide an annual performance appraisal. So that still stays, nothing changes. You all need to do that by the end of 2024. I think the second part of your question, I'm sorry.
Please.
So what I was asking was, considering that there are some parts of the framework or the appraisal process that are still being worked out, are there specific deadlines that we have to meet? Because it would not be fair to a general manager to move goalposts or not be clear on how we measure. And I think how we measure is still a little bit to be determined. I didn't see a specific date in the contract. I wanted to make sure that there was not some other document that I had missed. And then the other part to that question is, if we are not able to reach an agreement, then what happens? Is there a mediation process or some such?
So thank you for that clarification. So as I said, the board has to adopt the appraisal. What you're talking about with respect to, and you've already adopted the framework, that was the last action. So that is That's the framework by which the GM and CEO will be appraised. The process and the tool, so sort of the 360 tool that you all are talking about, that is just the tool that you're going to be using to make that assessment. But ultimately, as Director Catlin was noting, it's this board that will be responsible for the appraisal. So there's not really necessarily agreement that needs to be had with the GM and CEO. The board will be conducting that appraisal, obviously through the process that's established in the contract. There's not a deadline by which the 360 contract has to be put in place, and I think that might be something the chair is maybe potentially going to talk about next steps about how that contract will be, how those services will be procured. The only other deadline in the contract or the proposed amendment right now, of course, is that October 31st deadline, and that is the deadline to actually conduct the compensation analysis, as well as for the board to review that analysis, review any information that the GM and CEO wants to provide in connection with that, and then take action. I will note, actually, the proposed amendment also does make very clear that the board is not required to take any action to increase the adjusted base salary as a result of the compensation analysis that will be conducted.
And I'd just like to add as well, thank you, General Counsel Snyder, and thank you, Director Ruscia, for the question. Some of the deadlines were unchanged from existing within the contract, which is the adoption of the performance evaluation itself, which remains as December 31st at the end of the calendar year, and as amended, the adoption of goals and the framework for assessment being done by January 31st of the performance period with which we would be in. That was an amendment that came last year. So those two dates still exist as deadlines within the contract, unamended by this 7th Amendment. Thank you, Director Ruscia. Director Tisdale, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just for the sake of the record, because I believe that there could be some confusion generated by council's comment when I thought council said that these are terms that were negotiated between the board and the general manager, CEO. They have not been negotiated by the board. They were negotiated by the chair of the performance committee and the chair of the board, and not the balance of the board. And I just don't want people to think that somehow we already negotiated all this and now why are we all talking about it? It was negotiated by the board chair and the performance committee chair, and it's presented to the board now for review and approval. And that was my only comment, just to kind of help clarify for the benefit of those who don't know how this all works. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Director Tisdale. Any further discussion? I'll go ahead and call for a roll vote at this time once again. Treasurer Bouquet.
Yes.
Director Broom.
No.
Director Busick.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Yes.
Director Deschel.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Yes.
Secretary Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Ruscia.
Respectfully, no.
Director Sloan.
Yes.
Director Tisdale.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
This is Chair Davidson. I too am a yes. That is 2 no votes, 12 yes votes, and the motion will pass. Thank you very much. At this time, we do have 2 additional actions, as well as we'll have 2 discussion items. However, given just the time of the meeting, I'd like to call for a brief break for restroom. Please, let's keep this, this time we're actually going to do the 5-minute thing. So we will start exactly at 8:28 Mountain Standard Time. Thank you.
Coming straight from basketball, so. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just started last week. Already have half of my players right now looking at play because they're great, so. Excellent conversation. See how our first game goes tomorrow. How about you? Yeah. Can't go too wild. Yeah. Oh, sweet. Kids all coming? Nice. We're taking my daughter to Disney World. Well, she gonna be excited. My child is oh, sweet. That's her job. She's right now. Yeah. So she's yeah.
Primary caretaker of a student.
Well, you can tell here that
Something today.
We'll start in 2 minutes.
Okey doke. Good job. One more round. You gotta pay attention, huh? I'm texting with somebody who wrote me that our cat was in their house. I think Steve, usually we coordinate somebody getting home before dark and letting them in, but he's out doing a thing tonight. So.
Just about to get started. All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order, please. All right, we are reconvened after a 5-minute break at 8:28 Mountain Standard Time. We're going to move to the next recommended action on the agenda. This is for a bylaw change to create annual committee work plans. This is for the board to amend the bylaws to add Article 6, add Article 6, Committees of the Board, Section 4, Work Plans, to create annual work plans for each standing committee. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Tisdale has the motion, Bouquet has the second. At this time, I'd like to just briefly call upon our Board Office Executive Manager, Jack Kroll, if there's anything he would like to note with respect to this action.
Thank you, Chair Davidson. This is Board Office Executive Manager Jack Kroll. The only item I want to direct your attention to, given that you all saw this bylaw change in November and there was not any further input on it at that time. It was represented to the executive committee. No, excuse me. It came up in your discussions at your committee meetings in January about your work plans for the coming year, the idea of how to make changes to this. Based off of that feedback, I included some additional language that clarifies how changes can be made to the work plans once the committees approve them. And it states adjustments and additions to the work plan can be made by the committee chair in consultation with the committee vice chair and responsible RTD staff. So other than that, this is the same bylaw amendment that you all saw in November.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Are there any questions or is there any discussion on this item? I see Director Ruscha's hand, and then please go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Kroll, for all of your work on this. I'm really excited about this new process. I just wanted to note that there is still nothing that would preclude 3 directors from adding something to the agenda, either as an action or a discussion item. I just wanted to put that out. Thank you.
Important note, Director Ruscha. Thank you very much for that. Director Whitmore, please.
I'd like to thank Jack for his work with putting together our minutes, if you will, from our 3 committee meetings. My one question is, I don't see a real hard timeline on this. I think we can get to that, to where we're ready to go in February. This year, maybe not so much. We got some work to do. And I know our time as chair and co-chair with Mr. Ford is limited with our 3 goofy schedules, and I'm sure it's the same for the 2 committees. So I'm just throwing out a little, thank you for the smile. Note of caution is, this may have to go into March, and I hope not, but is that amenable to the group and in this language? I think it is, but so just a question to the chair and other chairs and vice chairs.
Yeah, thank you, Director Whitmore. I do see that. I'll let Mr. Kroll speak first, and then I'll follow on with the answer there. I see Mr. Kroll's offering a comment.
Yes, thank you for the question, Director Whitmore. The bylaw amendment here states that the committees would approve their work plans no later than March of each year. There was some thought that we could get it done by February. However, in a conversation that the chair and I had with GM and CEO Johnson earlier, it sounds like the better and more prudent course of action for this year is to target March, the first year that this has been done, and that there is some desire amongst the board at large to have a comprehensive view of all the work plans. And giving ourselves some more time here would allow for that comprehensive view to take place to ensure that certain agenda items are slotted in the right committee and at the right time.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. And Director Whitmore, I would just like to say, yeah, we're very much aligned on that. I think, we have some work to do to figure out how this will work. And I think at the retreat, this will also be a topic of ours to talk about how we want this to work. And I also think that after we do a year, we'll take a retrospective look at this as well. Director Ruscha, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just seeking clarification. This language says that the committee will create, approve, and forward to the full board for review. And I'm not asking for an amendment clarification, but does that mean vote? Will we vote on these at the March board meeting?
Mr. Kroll, if you'd like to clarify intent there.
Yeah, Director Deschel had actually raised the same question at the October study session, or I believe it was in the November meeting when this was first presented. The idea is that the board would simply review them, not approve them. That each committee would be responsible for approving their own work plans, but the board would be provided them for the board's review.
Thank you, Director Ruscha. Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Any further questions or discussion? I would like to note that given that this is a bylaw amendment, it can only pass with 10 or more votes in favor. So with that, I'm actually going to go back to asking if there are any no votes. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, The motion will pass with 14 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. All right, we're going to move to our final recommended action. This is for the bylaw change to set a time limit on board and committee meetings. This is for the Board of Directors to amend Article 4, Meetings, Section 8, Recesses and Adjournments, to set a time limit on the length of the meetings of the board and its committees. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Rosenthal.
Second, Whitmore.
The movement as Rosenthal, the second as Whitmore. At this time, I'd also like to invite first, if Mr. Cole, if there's any comments you would like to make.
Chair Davidson, I don't have anything additional to add other than this is the second time this bylaw has been presented to you all. It was first presented at the October study session. It had been slated for the agenda in November, but given the budget item, the chair and I at the time, with her behest, decided it would be best to consider this in January, so now it has come back before you.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll, for that clarification. I'll open the floor for discussion at this time, starting with Secretary Guzman, please.
Great leaders don't lead others with bitterness or resentfulness of past mistakes. They lead with hope and knowledge of the past to inform greater decision-making in the future. I think this is a foolish bylaw, and I don't think we need it. Our bylaws already allow us to use Robert's Rules of Order, and there are several steps to take to end a meeting and pick up business at a later date. This bylaw, although it does say that it will automatically forward any unfinished business to the proximate meeting, does not require it to be placed at the beginning of that meeting for business, and therefore is faulty because it can continually be pushed to the end of a 4-hour meeting and it ends our business. The bylaw does provide that in its current state that the clock begins running at the gaveling in of the meeting, but that's not when we begin our work, and we all know this. We do ceremony before we get to business. We do need to hear the people and do the people's work. That's why we're here. So I've also received several comments from constituents. Surprisingly, about this whole agenda, this was the topic of discussion that I cannot vote in favor of this bylaw amendment because it does limit our ability to do the work that we were elected to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Guzman, for your comments. Other questions or points of discussion from members of the board? Yes, Director Ruscia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On everyone's desks, there is a cheat sheet of some common Robert's Rules motions, and there is also, as you'll note, a page detailing how one can adjourn the meeting when there is business on the table. As Secretary Guzman noted, we already have these options in front of us in Robert's Rules. And when we do not specifically have a governance rule in our bylaws, Robert's Rules applies. To that end, I would also like to offer that there are other ways that we could be a more effective and efficient body getting through our business. I think the work plan is an excellent first start. But even in our meetings, I've noticed that sometimes we can't follow Robert's Rules or standard parliamentary procedure. If I could share an example, when someone says, I have a question and then a comment, well, one is speaking and one is a point of information, but we don't have a process in this body to separate the two. And unlike the other legislative bodies that Mr. Kroll shared with us that are also in our board packet, we don't have hearings and we don't have first and second readings. It was noted earlier in the meeting that some directors felt that they were given too much at once, too fast to get through. And often in this body, there is an action item of significant importance with very little heads up. So 100% agree that we don't want to be here longer than we have to. But I do share the concern that this bylaw proposal, while it's well intended, does not address the root cause of what brought us to this point. And so I will be a no vote tonight. And I would just implore our executive committee, irrespective of how this vote goes, to please work together and with our executive board office manager to figure out how might we move business in a way that is efficient, affords everyone the respect of having their voice heard, and also getting the information they need without ignoring or absconding our duty to do the people's business. And if there is anyone who is exceptionally qualified to lead that charge, I think it is Mr. Kroll. And if I may also note that Mr. Kroll was a former regent. They had some colorful meetings, and also its past chair. So I fully trust that that he can help us herd the cats that we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Director Busick, I saw your hand up, but I did see it come down. Was there a comment you wanted to make, sir?
It was going to be snarky, so I'll withdraw it, but I'm in support of this this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Busick. I'll move to Director Sloan, please.
Yes, I am definitely in support of this manner, and I'd like to approach it from I'd like to approach it from two ways. One is there's been a lot of research lately, mostly prompted by COVID and all the Zoom meetings that go on, to determine about fatigue that sets in at meetings. And, it's definitely shown, that the longer the meeting, it's difficult to be attending a meeting as well as being attentive at the meeting. And it's important to keep that in mind. My favorite phrase that I came up with from the University of Texas at Houston Medical School was that long meetings lead to cognitive dulling. So that is the objective research. Also, I have had personal experience. I was totally against a proposal for a very similar kind of thing to change the default for a meeting in city council. I voted against it. Everybody else was wiser than I was, voted for us. It tightened our meetings. We got more done, and we were not afraid to vote to extend the meeting. It's a very quick proposal. So as one of our emails said, it's only changing the default. It doesn't really change the need to work together on the public's business. But I don't think any members of this board would have the expectation that we would be making decisions, important decisions for the public, having discussions while we were undergoing cognitive dulling. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sloan. Director Broom, please.
I think I would support this. Maybe we could put in some kind of a sunset that it'd be reviewed after 6 months to see what kind of an impact it's had on the board, but let's give it a try.
Thank you, Director Broom. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I was elected mayor in Cherry Hills Village, I served on the council for 8 years. And during my first term, my late wife was the city attorney in Lafayette. My meetings were held 1 mile from my house. Her meetings in Lafayette were held 45 miles from our house. She always got home before I did on council nights. We had no rule, Lafayette did. And so just based upon that memory, I'm in support of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Harwick, please.
If I'm not mistaken, the bulk of the meetings that ran long last year, my only year here, were because of executive session. We can't take a vote during executive session, so how are we going to vote to end a meeting early if we can't take a vote?
It's a great question, Director Harwick. General Counsel Snyder, do you have any procedural advice on that consideration with the bylaw in front of us?
Yes, I think you can handle that on a case-by-case basis. I mean, certainly if you are, typically it's become the custom of this board within the last year or so too, when you're making the motion to go into executive session to also vote to adjourn. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You would also be able to come out of executive session and you can make your motion at that time. So I think there's flexibility that can be had. It's not going to tie your hands to be able to adjourn.
Thank you, General Counsel. Dr. Harwick, does that answer your question? First, Vice Chair Catlin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm kind of ambivalent about this, and quite frankly, I see persuasive arguments on both sides. I really appreciate yours, Director Guzman, and yours, Director Ruscha, and I also appreciate Bob Broom saying, let's give it a try. I think a lot of this stemmed from needing to maybe impart some more discipline on behalf of board members to try and become prepared to the meetings and ask questions in advance for clarification, and then and be prepared for a good discussion in the meeting. I was reminded by Director Tisdale when I was a consultant having to present to Boulder City Council, and my agenda item came up at 1:30 a.m. and then I had to drive home. So that was an extreme case, but I am inclined to be supportive of this with the knowledge that we do have the ability to extend the meeting when we're discussing important business. So thank you.
Thank you, First Vice Chair Catlin. Director Ruscha, please. Oh, sorry, Mr. Cole, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to draw Director Harwick and everyone's attention to the way the bylaw language, proposed bylaw amendment language is structured. And it says the committee and committee meetings of the Board of Directors shall be adjourned at the conclusion of the agenda item under consideration. You know, one way to look at that is if you're in executive session, typically you have gone into executive session to discuss a single topic. There are times where you could address additional topics, but for the most part, it's just one single topic. And the way it's structured is you would finish that discussion and then adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. It's a great point. Thank you for that. Director Ruscha, please.
Thank you. I'll just, actually, I need a moment to formulate my question.
Okay, thank you. Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, you know, quite frankly, so we are not a debating society. We are not the state legislature. We are not Congress. We are a board of directors. This is a very different dynamic. We don't have filibustering and that sort of dynamic. It would be of great concern if, you know, we had way too much discussion by, you know, one or more members who basically would, you know, drive a certain topic. And so we need to make sure that we all, as mentioned earlier, that we are thoughtful in how we, you know, speak, how we, you know, try to work on these various issues, and so that we can have more discipline with how we approach our meetings. Additionally, some of our board members do take transit home. and that we need to make sure that they are able to obtain that transit. And the later we go, it sort of makes it more difficult for them. And so let's be respectful of our fellow RTD board members. Additionally, some board members work in the morning. And so, as mentioned earlier, we have a teacher among us who gets up probably earlier than all of us. Probably not our GM and CEO, probably. She's probably 2 hours on emails by then. But you know, so it is important to also respect that some of us do work very early the next morning as well. So those are additional perspectives to bring.
Thank
Why
you.
I'm supportive.
Thank you, Director Rosenthal. Secretary Guzman, please.
I'll be a little selfie-facing in the moment. I'm a barista, and I have to get up at 3 or 3:30 in the morning to get to work on time. So a late meeting is not desirable outcome for me either. I have heard Director Bouquet refer to being up early for school in the morning, but I'm there to give you your coffee on the way to the school. You know, we've had other comments about being, you know, having early morning meetings, so I do understand, and this has been my struggle all along. I was ambivalent when we brought this up as a study session item last year, and at no point in time has anybody given me a solid, concrete answer for why we can't use what exists in our current bylaws to maneuver and adjust meetings. We can always adjourn early. Section 21 of Robert's Rules is all about adjournment and the rules that go with it. Again, the reason you would change a bylaw is if something is actually broken and it needs to be fixed, or you are not in line with statutory law. None of those reasons exist. And so although I can understand that there may be plenty of reasons to, when we get to the cognitive doling that was spoken about earlier, I think one or more of us may have the cognitive ability to ask for adjournment and to set aside topics until a later date. So again, I would just encourage us to vote no on this. Maybe we could also take an action to put it back to committee and work on it a little bit more so it's a little bit more palatable for some of those reasons that have been expressed here. But although we are not a deliberative body, we do have processes to have this discussion, and by limiting ourselves to have the proper discussion before it comes here, we would never have this issue on anything that comes to this board if we took the time to get that work done before it got here. This is one more rushed thing that we are in a disagreement about demonstratively, that probably, in my opinion, means that we are not ready to deal with this yet. And you know, we could make a motion to commit it. I'm not making that motion right now, but that means to send it back to the committee, work on it further, and then bring it when it's more fleshed out. That's also an option. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Guzman. Director Sloan, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for providing me a second bite at the apple. You know, of course, it's great to get home. Everybody knows that. But it's not purely self-interest to have this bylaw that gives us expectation of when a meeting is going to end. And, you know, I understand that Robert's Rules of Order would let me just raise my hand and make a motion to adjourn, but I think it would be shocking. This provides some structure so that we all understand, you know, what our system is going to be. And I would also like to emphasize that we want to get things right. We don't want to just keep forging ahead and not making a good decision. So for that reason, structure and good decision making with expectations of when a meeting will end, I think this is a helpful thing. And as Director Broom said, and everyone understands, we can always change this if for some reason it doesn't work out. I believe it will, and we will have better meetings for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sloan. I am sure there is an awesome joke about a board of directors discussing the amount of time they spend at a meeting. There's a great joke somewhere in here. I'd like us to get close to, I'd like us to get closer to the vote if we can. Again, it's going to be a bylaws change, so it will require 10 aye votes. But Director Ruscia, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for permitting me another bite at the apple as well. If I may, I have a clarifying question on the motion, on the language.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. The language says, a meeting may be extended by a majority vote of present and voting members. A motion to extend a meeting may or may not state a time when the meeting will conclude. If such time is set, a motion may be made and a majority of the board may pass an additional motion to extend. And I apologize if it's just 9 o'clock and I'm tired, but could someone explain, do we need 2 motions to set a time or to determine the items still on the table? That would be my first question. And then this motion, or excuse me, this bylaws change also does not specify if these motions are debatable.
Thank you, Director Ruscia. I'm going to turn to Board Office Manager, Executive Board Office Manager, Mr. Kroll, who raised his hand there.
Yeah, and I'll qualify this that if General Counsel Snyder has anything else to add, it might be good to hear her thoughts. But my sense of this is that the language you referenced in the bylaw amendment, a motion to extend a meeting may or may not set a time or state a time when the meeting will conclude. If such a time is set, a motion may be made and a majority of the board may pass an additional motion to extend. All that's saying is you can extend it once and then you can extend it again. And I would assume that those motions would be debatable. I mean, they're not the standard, procedural privilege motions that are not debatable as outlined in Robert's rules. I don't think it would be too controversial, though, to talk about how long you want to keep going for, and you might have some good ideas that come forward as a result of that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Director Ruscia, does that answer your questions?
It does. May I be permitted a final comment? Thank you, sir. If this were a resolution that had an end date, I could vote yes to try it. I do believe, however, that this could easily be weaponized. In my experience in dealing with legislative bodies with a clock, a filibuster doesn't have to be literal. It can be figurative and it can be a tactic to run the clock down so people get tired. Our bylaws also have the effective law, and I'm personally uncomfortable with testing really important things in our bylaws. I would prefer that we test this as a body and trust our chair. I'll be a no vote, and I will also accept what the majority decides.
Thank you, Director Ruscia. Director Deschel, please.
Yeah, I think this may be a clerical item that could be cleaned up after, but the initial motion is based on a majority of the present and voting members. However, the motion to extend after the set time is a motion of the majority of the board, which would indicate if we had 12 members present at a meeting, the initial motion to extend would require 7, but the subsequent motion would require 8 because it doesn't specify that it's, I just wanted to make sure that that was not, the intent is it's the same majority both times. It's not that it steps up from, and if that is clerical and can be cleaned up afterwards, that would be appreciated. If I have to move to amend, that's fine too.
Director Deschel, thank you for pointing that out. I believe that it is likely a clerical issue, but I'll turn to General Counsel Snyder whether that would require an amendment.
Yes, I think that's a clerical issue.
Thank you, General Counsel, and thank you, Director Deschel. All right, I would like to move on to the vote. I will just state that I am a yes on this, and for the sake of the record, that has everything to do with discipline. That has everything to do with how we prepare for the meeting, how we engage with staff, how we engage with the board. And it takes a long-term view of our work plans, bringing things forward as discussion items before they become recommended actions. When they are items that are going to warrant deep discussion, it also calls upon committees to really be efficient and bring forward fully completed recommended actions, as well as leveraging the committee chairs' reports to highlight important issues. So I think, as has been noted, we can test this, we can try this. If it's not serving us, we can always revisit it. But for me, this has as much to do with discipline, how we show up, how this board engages with staff, as it does anything else. Certainly more the priority than ending business. So with that, I will call for the vote. I'm going to do a roll vote. I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. Treasurer Bouquet.
Yes.
Director Broom.
Yes.
Director Busick.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Yes.
Director DeShell.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
Yes.
Secretary Guzman.
No.
Director Harwick.
No.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Rusha.
No.
Director Sloan.
Yes.
Director Tisdale.
Ooh, I'm torn. Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
This is Chair Davidson. I am also a yes. That is an 11 yes vote. And we have, sorry, forgive me, 3 no votes, 0 absent, or 0 abstention. The motion does pass. I'd like to address Director Rusha, your comment about trying this out. Certainly, everyone has my commitment here that we will get the business done that the people need done. We will partner with staff to make that happen. At no point will we cut that short. We'll work on this. We'll try it out. If it's not serving us, we'll revisit it. So thank you. With that, we are going to move to our discussion items this evening. First discussion item is for the board and committee meeting accessibility and policy consideration. First of all, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Carl Green Jr., our Director of Civil Rights Division, as well as Mr. Gabe Christie, our ADA Manager, and Mr. Jack Kroll, our Executive Manager of the Board Office, for their work on this. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Mr. Green and Mr. Christie for remaining here, for being patient with us as we get to this item. It's a very important one. I'd like to highlight, before opening up to discussion, and certainly would invite Mr. Green, Mr. Christie, and Mr. Kroll to add any additional information if they would so choose. But I'd like to just highlight, this did come before Executive Committee. We're joined by Executive Committee as well as other members of the board, and we engaged in a discussion around what our general accessibility options may be by default to increase the accessibility of board meetings and committee meetings. Staff presented us with 2 fundamental options, one of which is where the consensus of the committee was, as well as other directors that were present, which was to pursue 2 things to enhance the accessibility of our board meetings and committee meetings by default. 1 is the addition of CART services, and 2 is the addition of Spanish language translation services. We were presented with not only benchmarks of other transit agencies and other public entities that staff had researched and presented to us, but we were also provided with information about the demographics of our customer base and our community whom we serve. It was very informative, it was extremely helpful, and Executive Committee ultimately asked for more information to come before Executive Committee and ultimately this board contemplating a policy that this board may adopt, including any of the financial impact related to this adoption, which would be the addition of the CART services by default and the Spanish language translation services. So thank you to staff for that. I would note that those who had presented are here to answer questions. First, I'll open the floor to see if any of those who did present have any comments that they would like to offer. Please don't feel obligated to do so. And then I'd like to open up for any director's questions. So any comments from members of staff? All right, seeing none, I'll open up to members of the board for any questions or discussion. Director DeShell, please.
Yeah, I appreciate the fiscal note on cart services as well as Spanish language services. I don't think you can put a price on accessibility, and I don't think you can put a price on people being able to interact with our business and the people's business at hand. So to me, there's no question in my mind. Each of us has a local budget that undoubtedly, these services are, at least from my perspective, significantly more important than any coffees or conferences or any other matters that we might be able to go to. You have to take care of your home first. So no question in my mind that these are necessary and long overdue.
Well stated, Director DeShell. Thank you very much. Other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Mr. Kroll, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Davidson. The only thing that I would note is that to add to your comments, Chair Davidson, is that the policy we would bring back for you all to review in February will be based on a pilot timeframe. So we would provide these services automatically. That's the direction we've received, to come back with a policy that states as such. And we would set a timeline for when you would reconsider it, likely the end of this year, if not the beginning of next year. And that way we can have some data to back up, how well utilized were these services, and you can make an informed decision about where you want to go for the long term at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this measure directly relates to services for board meetings. And I'm curious as to the accommodations for our town halls, the meetings we have in the community, whether it's for service changes and things like that, what services we provide.
I can address that briefly and then open up if anyone would like to fill in any gaps I might leave. So thank you for the question. Generally speaking, our ADA accommodations are requested by members of the public with 48 hours notice for being provided. That would continue for anything that's not a board and committee meeting. Likewise, any member of this board that may have individual requests, again, may be submitted with respect to those types of events. What I would say, this is really more directly addressing the default of the committee meetings and the board meetings, and taking the onus off of the public needing to request two services, which is where the executive committee had a good chance to take a look at, again, the members of the public who we serve and what would make sense to be by default. So if there's anyone that would like to clarify, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll take a look around. But Director Rosenthal, does that answer your question? Thank you very much. Other questions, discussion? I also should have noted that I know I framed consensus, formal actions not taken on this when it's a discussion item, but it was unanimous consensus at the executive session, so just for the sake of the record there. All right, thank you. With that, seeing no further discussion on that discussion item, and again, thank you for spending the time here with us and being available, we'll move to our final discussion item of the evening. This is with respect to station naming policy review. At this time, I'm going to ask again, Mr. Jack Kroll, our executive manager of the board office, to please present this item. Mr. Kroll, we'll pause for you to approach the microphone, and then the floor is yours when you arrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Davidson. So you all heard a significant amount of public comment earlier today about renaming of Civic Center Station. This discussion is not exactly at that point by any means. All we're looking for direction for, and we asked this of the executive committee earlier, is three things. One is, do you even want to open the door to having a policy by which stations can be renamed after individuals? If you've taken the opportunity to read the board report, you'll see that the current policy, which is an amalgamation of three actions the board took, one in '94, one in 2003, and one in 2011, simply doesn't even contemplate the concept of naming a station after individuals. Instead, it mirrors what is nationally done, which is to name stations after their geographic locations for purposes of allowing people who are using the system to navigate it with optimal ability. So that's question number one. Question number two is, you know, or the ask is, if you went down the route of opening the door to renaming stations after individuals, what are some general thoughts you might have about what the policy should look like? And then the third question has two parts, which is, if you open the door and you give us some feedback on what you might like to see, I have recommended that the board office work with two directors that Director Davidson as chair asks to work with us, as well as senior staff identified by the GM and CEO, to bring back those policy recommendations for you all in March. So the third question tonight is, do you agree with that timeline and that approach for addressing this, if you even open the door to it? So that's the framework for the conversation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. I very much appreciate it. So at this time, we did discuss this at executive committee, but we're bringing this forward here for feedback from directors from the full board as to how to proceed. And to summarize, the immediate next step in front of us would be, should we decide that this is something we would want to explore, whether we would have a policy for station naming, then identifying two members of the board, for which I do have a recommendation to engage and liaise with staff on the development of such a policy. So that's the discussion at hand. We'll open up to directors now at this time, starting with Director Whitmore, please.
Jack, which work plan would this fall under? Just kidding. I think this is a very worthy cause, and I think we need to explore it further. So I'm in full agreement with the model that the two of you have discussed. So let's move forward.
Thank you, Director Whitmore. Second Vice Chair Geisinger, please.
Yeah, a lot of requests here, a lot of interest in the Wade blank, and we need to have a policy. We need to consider this, and I think having two directors work with the staff and the board office is the right way to go.
Thank you very much. Director Deschel, please.
Thank you. It sort of strikes me that the question is, why wouldn't you rename Civic Center Plaza Reverend Wade Blank Plaza if that's the intended effect? To me, you achieve much more through that avenue. And then we would also therefore be required to change the name to Reverend Blake Station, because that would be the name of the plaza. I think it's something worthy of exploring. I think people are complicated. Not speaking of Reverend Blank in particular, but there's a number of instances where people have erected statues or memorials or named streets or mountains after individuals who they believed at the time were honorable, were doing the right thing, were commemorable. And I think when you name something, it lasts for a long time. And I think we're sort of trying to go about it the wrong way, right? To me, why wouldn't the push be to rename the plaza as opposed to rename the station? Has a much more limited effect. I think it's worth exploring. I also, to the extent we do explore it, would be inclined to take an approach similar to LA Metro, which still provides the wayfinding for where you're actually going. I think it's incredibly important to honor people, especially people like Reverend Blake, who have made these incredible contributions. I think for the reasons I've stated, I think we're not approaching it correctly, and you could have a much greater impact if we just renamed the plaza itself and worked with everyone to do that in this particular instance. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Director Deschel. I would note that I think this is exactly where it's helpful that, for us to engage on looking at a broader policy and what our threshold would be, which could be, the markers themselves. So I would ask if we do proceed here and have directors working with members of staff to take that into consideration. And thank you for your comments. Secretary Guzman, please.
Just quickly, I do appreciate that this is not a hard no, because we are not supposed to be the agency of no. And it does give us an opportunity to consider it. And so I think working with staff and board mitigates the problem of not managing expectations. We can understand the fiscal potential to this, consider things like working with the city to rename areas so that we have the geographical wayfinding sort of commitment that we have always had. So I would just encourage us to go forward with this. And I think the March deadline is probably a sufficient amount of time to get it done. But if it turns out that there are some snags along the way, I would be open to receiving something later. I just think that we can get this done in the name of efficiency.
Thank you, Secretary. Dr. Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do think it's necessary to have process. And as someone who's actually worked on a naming, I gathered the signatures and worked with Denver City Council to name our courthouse for Judge Ben Barr Lindsay, who was the very first juvenile court judge and a progressive hero in the early 1900s. And the City Council named the new courthouse after both Lindsay and Judge Flanagan, who was the very first African-American judge in Colorado. And so I am certainly, I know how important process is. It was frustrating for me at the time. I'm like, well, why do I have to get all these signatures? And why do I have to go through this process? But I think what it does is it helps us consider the gravity of what we're doing, but also that everyone in the community understands that, when we go through this process, that we have done our homework, and that the decision we arrive at has been through a thoughtful process. So I do support this, that we go through the process and we consider names, both whether it's Reverend Blank and others, or just Reverend Blank or what have you. So I think it's important that we have a process that is better defined for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosenthal. And agreed. In fact, I would just offer my comment that, thank you, Mr. Kroll, for identifying what ultimately was a policy gap. I think sitting in the position we're in now, we'd all have liked if we had a policy to fall back onto to ask a specific question. So hearing the nature of the discussion, I think it does make sense for us to proceed with two directors to liaise with staff and engage with the board office with Mr. Kroll to research and recommend what a general policy would be prior to considering any general questions. I'll share with the board now that the two directors that I have spoken to ahead of this meeting and asked for their participation, given their experience and given their passion in this area, are Directors Ruscia and Director Sloan. So if the two of them are amenable to carry this forward and work with staff, it would be very much appreciated, certainly by me and this board. Given that I have named the two of you right now, you're welcome to make a comment if you'd like. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, I think it's an important endeavor, and I appreciate Paul's comment. I think he's got some information for the committee working on this about how Denver goes about the naming process. Thank you.
Anything like you'd like to offer, Director Ruscia?
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm also looking forward to working with Director Sloan on this.
Thank you very much. And General Manager and CEO Johnson, thank you for the willingness to engage with members of your staff and engage and help us make progress on this area. All right, with that, we will move to our report of director activities. At this time, I'd like to ask if any members of the board would like to report on activities of the months of December and January, being mindful of our approaching 4-hour mark. Director Tisdale, please.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to point out that I did conduct the Board Talk Live session that was presented by the APTA TBM Committee on Making the Economic Case for Transit. I'm happy to say that several of our directors did participate in that. It is available online for your viewing should you like. And today we had the American Public Transportation Foundation Board new member orientation. The principal task of the foundation is reviewing applications and awarding scholarships. So if you're interested in helping youth who want to go on in an education in transit, please talk to me. And we did have the meeting of the Denver Downtown Development Authority, which I chair, in December. And I'm happy to say, and I was reelected as chair, and I'm happy to say it looks like we're going to retire our debt for the Downtown Development Authority in 2025, ahead of schedule by far. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I've certainly had a number of activities in the community, but one I'll call attention to is I attended a luncheon with the Colorado Business Roundtable. And, you know, in that occasion and many other occasions, I have an opportunity to speak about the work that our general manager and all the staff and all of our drivers, our operators, and our mechanics, and so many others who work for RTD, and the good work they're doing, the admirable work, and in the cold and in the night and the difficulty and the fatigue, they still plow through. And so I'm always promoting RTD in the community, and everyone at RTD. We are one, we are we. And that does not mean, however, that, you know, we are perfect. I appreciate Director Rusha for referring me to some constituents who wanted to chat last weekend from the National Coalition for the Blind, and so passed along to our board office some of their perspectives and feedback. But they were also, there was a woman who was from Albuquerque, and she said, "I am so happy to be in Denver because of the transit options that she has." And so just wanted to pass along that feedback. And number one. Number two, that I hear a lot of discussion in the community about Front Range Passenger Rail and how it intersects with RTD, and that RTD is a strong partner in that effort. I know we're looking at our peak service and how that intersects with the Front Range Passenger Rail, but also commending our general manager and CEO for being an ex officio member of that. And that's yet another thing that she has on her plate, and her team, obviously, who assists her in that effort. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Director Rosenthal. Seeing no other directors' hands raised, I'll touch on other matters. Are there other matters to discuss?
Someone took away my speak, but great work, first meeting, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Director Deschel, and thank you, everybody, for your patience this evening and for working through this. Very much appreciated. Seeing no other discussion, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I had Broom as the movement. Any objection? All right, the meeting.
I object, actually. I actually believe that Director Rusha, I had heard her voice first.
Oh. Thank you. All right, Director Rusha. All right, thank you. This meeting is adjourned as of 9:21 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Mr. Ford? Yes, sir.